speech as we talk on the theme of today on Wole Soyinka.
Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka, guest speakers, the National Association of Sea Dogs, invited guests. Good day to you. I wish to express my sincere appreciation to the organizers of this timely and very relevant topic. National integration, a panacea for socio-economic development in Nigeria. Nigeria is a country that is well endowed with such enormous human and natural resources. There should be nothing mitigating her becoming a first world country. However, in spite of her endowment, the country continues to lag in almost all major indices of socio-economic development. Now, the format of my talk today is going to begin with the federal character principle, followed by the civil service. Then we'll look at national integration. And finally, we'll look at socio-economic development. Now, the federal character principle was introduced into the 1979 Constitution, primarily with the objective of achieving unity and loyalty. And the major elements include the requirements that A, the composition of the government of the Federation or any of its agencies and the conduct of affairs shall be carried out in such a manner as to reflect the federal character of Nigeria and the need to promote national unity and also to command loyalty, thereby ensuring that there shall be no predominance of persons from a few states or from a few ethnic or sectional groups in that government or any of its agencies. B, the composition of government of a state, a local government, council, or any of its agencies of such government or council, and the conduct of the affairs of the government or council or such agencies shall be carried out in such manner as to recognize the diversity of peoples within its area of authority and the need to promote a sense of belonging and loyalty among all peoples. Now, the principle provides a set of guidelines for participation in the governance of the nation in such a way that no section or group dominates. Basically, the creation of each segment of the Federation should assure some degree of equality among its people, and such engendering a sense of belonging and hence integration. Section 153 of the 1999 Constitution established the Federal Character Commission, an executive body with the power to oversee and monitor the implementation of the Federal Character Clause as follows. 1, work out an equitable formula subject to the approval of the National Assembly for the distribution of all cadres of posts in the public service of the Federation and the states, the Armed Forces of the Federation, the Nigeria Police Force, and other security agencies, government-owned companies, and parastatals of the states. 2, promote, monitor, and enforce compliance with the principle of proportional sharing of all bureaucratic, economic, media, and political posts at all levels of government. 3, take such legal measures, including prosecution of the head or staff of any ministry or government body or agencies which fails to comply with any federal character, principle, or formula prescribed by the Commission and as provided for in Section A3 of the schedule. 4, notwithstanding any provisions in any other law or enactment, the Commission shall ensure that every every public or corporation reflects the federal character in the appointment of its director and senior management staff. Now, as lofty as this, what I call contraption, called the federal character principle may seem, it was not until July 2002 that the executive body charged with the implementation was inaugurated. So consequently, it will appear that the implementation was haphazard, resulting in declining confidence among the citizens. Now, prior to the introduction of the federal character principle, it was implied that there may be the predominance of persons from a few states or ethnic or sectional groups within the federal bureaucracy. Also, if I may note, it is my understanding that one of the defining moments was when the late, defining moment in terms of federal character was when the late General Murtala Mohammed, in his opening address to the Constitution Drafting Committee, enunciated the federal character term. While the essence of the principle may have been to allow for the composition and conduct of public institutions and affairs to reflect Nigeria's diversity, it may also have been designed to mitigate the bellicose political entanglements that characterize previous iterations of government. Thus, a major question that derives from this is whether the principle can rightly be used to address the problem of discrimination in the composition and conduct of public institutions and affairs such that effective integration of various sections of the society is assured. Contrarily, it may seem that appointments are or were given to mediocre persons based on the rationale that such affected individuals are less privileged or educationally disadvantaged. Of course, as could be expected, there were strong reservations expressed by some members of the panel members of the 1979 Constitution regarding the use of ethnicity or linguistic extractions to define Nigerians. The other major reservation had to do with the explicit use of sectional representation in the conduct of state affairs. On the other hand, the proponents steadfastly, perhaps impiously, maintained that their quest was to ensure national unity and loyalty. Now, since Nigeria's presidential system is modeled after the United States, it is noteworthy also that there appears to be a parallel to the US Civil Service Act of 1883, which stated that, quote, conditions of good administration will warrant appointments to be apportioned among the several states and territories and the District of Columbia upon the basis of population as ascertained at the last preceding census. However, the difference here from the federal character principle is that you're talking about apportionment based on a population, unlike what we have in the federal character principle. Now, the federal character principle also defines who is an indigene. Under this principle, an indigene is a local government. An indigene of a local government means a person, either of whose parents or any of whose grandparents was or is an indigene of the local government, or B, who is accepted as an indigene by the local government, provided that no person shall lay claim to more than one local government. C, an indigene of a state means a person who's an indigene of one local government, one of the local governments in that state. The principle also characterizes an indigene of the Federal Capital Territory. An indigene of the Federal Capital Territory is a Nigerian citizen other than by naturalization, who cannot lay claim to any state of the Federation, or is a person born in the Federal Capital Territory and whose descendants live in the area presently constituting the Federal Capital Territory before 26 February 1976, and has continued to reside in the Federal Capital Territory after that date. The principle also characterizes a married woman in terms of the federal character principle. The position of a married woman shall continue to lay claim to a state of origin for the purpose of implementation of the federal character formula at the national level. It's my understanding that this principle may have been extrapolated to the states, but based on the principle, it is at the national level. So in essence, Nigeria's federal character principle sought to emphasize the elements of fairness and equity in the representation of the various ethnic groups and states in public service. Now, a fair question would be, why was there so much concern? Well, let's take a look at the Federal Civil Service. In 1954, Nigeria's federal system had 4 governments, 1 national and 4 regional: the eastern, the northern, and the western regions, with each arm having a career civil service as enshrined in the then Constitution. The civil service evolved with the exit of the British. Now, at that relatively pristine period, Nigeria tried to continue with the structure left by the exiting British, hence the desire to perform similar services, functions, while upholding same service norms, political neutrality, impartiality at the national and regional levels. However, because of limited capacity of available competent local manpower at that time, there was keen competition in attracting the desired staff both at the federal and regional levels. While the regions appear to invoke regional loyalties in order to attract staff from the colonial service, they did prefer their citizens, favor their citizens. Meanwhile, at the federal level, when the unpretentious Alhaji Tafawa Balewa became the prime minister, he favored merit system as evidenced by his statement, quote, "Appointments and promotion to posts in the federal public service are not based on tribal considerations. Any Nigerian, no matter his tribe, is eligible for appointment or promotion to any post for which his experience, seniority, academic attainment, and merit qualify him," unquote. To me, this was supposed to have been a defining moment in terms of integration in Nigeria. However, unexpectedly, there was some pushback against the Prime Minister's statement. Again, here was a missed opportunity at national integration. The sectional pressures continued to mount, ensuring that representation was explicitly embedded in the federal civil service. Eventually, in 1974, during a lecture at the Midwest Public Service Forum, Alhaji Sule Kadagun, the then chairman of the Federal Civil Service Commission, forcefully made a case for regional representation within the merit system. 5 years after the Alhaji's speech, federal character principle was inserted in the '79 Constitution. Well, I'm not trying to assert there was a cause and effect relationship here, but that's what happened. The major argument against the sole use of merit in the placement or advancement in the federal civil service was the lopsided educational disadvantage, primarily in the northern region, a region that lagged behind the eastern and the western regions of the country. And even that trend continues within the 36 state structure of the country. The way the principle is currently manipulated gives the impression that folks from the southern country, and indeed the entire Nigerian public, assume there is this northern privilege, or what some may call northern entitlement. Also bear in mind that the higher cadre of civil servants in the federal civil service could assume significant and disproportionately influential role in resource allocations, which could result potentially in an imbalance in infrastructural developments between the northern and southern sections of the country. So there have been a lot of issues which mitigate national integration. So let's look at national integration. Basically, this is the awareness of a common identity amongst the citizens of the country, even though the individuals may belong to different communities, castes, religions, cultures, regions, or zones, and may speak different languages. Now, acknowledging and accepting diversity is very important in modern society. In fact, diversity brings different perspectives, experiences, and abilities, and it does make a nation stronger and more successful. Contrary to intuition, studies have shown that there may be differences within groups than between groups. In fact, this concept is usually emphasized in yearly diversity training for employees here in the United States. Now, despite the well-intended, unity-oriented programs and policies, Nigeria's cohesiveness as an entity is still plagued by potentially divisive influences. Although Nigerians are very proud of their citizenship, very proud, you will be hard-pressed to find a Nigerian, the average Nigerian, who's willing to die for his or her country. They're so proud of being Nigerian. But will I put my life down for the country? In a way, in simple words, it will appear that country does not come first. This reminds me of the mere geographical expression that has been attributed to the late Chief Obafemi Awolowo. In fact, the average Nigerian probably continues to assume that the late statesman was against the unity of Nigeria. Far from it. In the Chief's 1947 book titled Path to Nigerian Freedom, yes, this statement, quote, "If political progress is to be made in Nigeria, it is high time we were realistic in tackling its constitutional problems. Nigeria is not a nation. It is a mere geographical expression. They are not Nigerians in the same sense as they are English, Welsh, or French." End of quote. Now, this paragraph is captured in a title in the book, in a chapter titled Towards Federal Union. Towards Federal Union. This was a chapter in this book. And this makes it clear that Chief Awolowo was an advocate of a federal constitution, not a secessionist, not a disintegrationist. He was more concerned about the constitutional problems of Nigeria. He was an advocate of a federal constitution. And I would say I'm unaware that his peers in the northern section of the country had similar constitutional concerns at that time. National building or national integration has been a focus of post-colonial governments in Africa, especially in Nigeria, a country plagued by recurring issues like minority, majority, religious conflicts, ethnic politics, indigenous settlers, resource control, federal character, sovereign national conference, restructuring, just to name a few. In fact, there are other nations that have similar issues like Nigeria. However, Nigeria appears to be very unique among nations. Rather than integrating into a cohesive entity, the well over 250-something ethnic groups are engaged in fierce competition for dominance, even within the same geographical space. Even within the same geographical space. Also, because of the relative lack of education and thus enlightenment, disparate groups are prone to manipulative strategies of the elite, thus mitigating integration. Now, the land use decree may have been intended to douse some of these issues, whereby the governor of the state could allocate land to any applicant irrespective of state of origin. However, citizens may still be discriminated against during the process of land acquisition because of ethnic or religious considerations. The National Youth Service Corps, likewise, may have been conceptualized as a means to unite the country. However, this program is probably also corrupted by ethnicity, favoritism, cronyism, and so on, in terms of placement. Furthermore, in some section of the country, at the end of a service period, an individual who may seek employment within the service entity or area may be hired on a contractual basis solely because of non-indigenship, particularly in the northern section of the country. Now, this appears to be consistent with the early northernization policy of the once ruling Northern People's Congress, which categorically stated, quote, if a qualified northerner is available, he is given priority in recruitment. If no northerner is available, an expatriate may be recruited, or a non-northerner on contract terms, end of quote. And we're supposed to be one entity. Nigeria is supposed to be an entity. And we have this type of clause being espoused by a section of the country. What about the relocation of the Federal Capital Territory from Lagos to Abuja? When this concept was originally thrown out, I was still a young boy in Nigeria, and at that time we thought that yes, they wanted to move the federal capital city to a central location, where, like we all know, the capital of the country does not necessarily to be centrally located. Again, tribal or regional consideration may have weighed heavily in the move. Regarding the national rationale for the move, the report of the Committee on the Relocation stated, quote, "There is no doubt that Nigeria is a federation consisting of a large number of ethnic and language groups with differing cultures and traditions. Now, Lagos is within an area traditionally belonging to one of the major ethnic groups, namely the Yoruba. In our view, the circumstances of Nigeria demand that the capital be not situated within a city, the type of Lagos, with strong connection with one of the major ethnic groups. It is our belief that one way of forging the idea of unity of this nation is by building a capital city which will belong to every other Nigerian, where Nigerian will be rest assured that he has an opportunity to live in parity with every other Nigerian, and where no Nigerian shall be regarded either in law or in the facts as a native foreign, End of quote. Well, this will sound like a well-meaning and lofty idea. You could say that. However, it is my understanding that no Southerner has been elected to serve as a mayor of Abuja, since to me the idea appears to have been conceived by some Northerners as a prized project belonging to the North. Now, it will appear that we've been at the crossroads for a long time. Yes, people say that we've been at the crossroads for a long time. Yet, most are reluctant to cross the road. So it will appear that we are in this for the long haul. Therefore, we must learn how to get along. So let's look at socio-economic development. At its most basic level, socio-economic development simply suggests improvement in the conditions and quality of life and development of whole people and indeed the entire nation. Nigeria is a nation of approximately 250 odd linguistic groups with dissimilar and sometimes similar cultures. However, because the country is well endowed with such enormous human and natural resources, there should be nothing mitigating her being a first world country. I sincerely believe this. Nigerians in diaspora, Nigerians back home, they thrive. They all thrive. Here in the United States, Nigerians are the most educated ethnic group. In the whole United States, Nigerians are the most educated group. So there's no reason why Nigeria should not be one of those classified as a third world country. Now, in spite of our endowment, the country continues to lag in almost every major indices of development. Ethnicity has been identified as a major factor contributing to Nigeria's status as an undeveloped nation. It may also have become a dependable item in the political toolkit of our leaders. This trait probably could be traced to the amalgamation of the northern and southern section of the country, with the dominant ethnic groups being Hausa, Fulani, Igbo, and Yoruba. At amalgamation, ethnic loyalties fostered intertribal conflict as a means of controlling governance, resources, and this may have later resulted in ethnic affiliated groups such as Afenifere, Arewa, and Ohanese, groups that potentially could continue to undermine the integration of the nation. Socioeconomic imbalance is probably the motivational force driving this competition. Consequently, Nigerian leaders have exploited this competition to further their ethnicity-based socio-economic political objectives to the detriment of national integration. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo once observed that, quote, socio-economic transformation of Nigeria lies in the absolute faith, confidence, and trust in the country's leadership, end of quote. Where this is coming from Obasanjo. Well, he had opportunity to walk the talk. He had an opportunity to walk the talk. In the same light, the late Professor Chinua Achebe once reasoned that, quote, the horrible state of affairs in the country has nothing to do with geography or climate or the type of food Nigerians eat. Rather, the trouble with Nigeria is the recurrent blizzard of mediocre and corrupt leadership, end of quote. So it is remarkable to know that Nigeria's dire socioeconomic development could be attributed to successive leaders. Now, this may be debatable. However, there appears to be an unwillingness or inability to harness the nation's human and natural potentials for development. There is no reason why other culturally diverse nations thrive and Nigeria cannot. With focused leadership and foresight, countries like the United States, Canada, Brazil, Malaysia, Singapore, just to mention a few, have been able to exploit their diversity for socio-economic development. This is particularly true of the United States. Now, if I may remind you, it was John F. Kennedy during his inaugural address on January 20, 1961, who challenged his fellow citizens first. Quote, "And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country." End of quote. Now, here is the leader's challenge to the society to contribute to improve the public good. National integration is highly desirable in multi-religious, multi-ethnic, multi-caste, multi-zonal, multi-regional society like Nigeria. Regional or zonal imbalance in economic development and acute poverty of certain sections of the country imposes serious impediments in the achievement of national integration. Now, despite the adoption of economic planning and a number of socioeconomic welfare measures, poverty continues to be a serious problem. A high percentage of people remain far away from the national mainstream, requiring special programs to improve and ensure common prosperity. Now, Nigeria is considered a fast-growing country and has almost every type of relevant resources for continued growth. However, some issues may be affecting the economy include unemployment, corruption, devaluation of the naira, poor infrastructure management, just to mention a few. Regarding unemployment, after growing for more than 15 consecutive quarters, latest figures put unemployment rate at 23%, with more than 38% of the unemployed individuals being below the age of 24. Now, regarding corruption, some believe corruption is a political issue. Indeed, government and civil servants are not the only players in terms of corruption. For example, not too many people want to be engaged in labor-intensive farming when they can sit in air-conditioned suite offices, getting paid, while concurrently making a lot on the side. When I say on the side, that's in Nigerian terms. These individuals could make on the side even more than their regular monthly salary. Now, corruption is just as prevalent in the private sector. Regarding the devaluation of the naira is periodically being devalued, with the government probably compounding the situation. Devaluation is a recurrent feature of the economy, just like inflation. Despite a huge amount of exported oil, the naira continues to depreciate amongst major international currencies. Decades ago, when I left for the United States, the naira and the dollar were at par. Now, regarding infrastructure, Nigeria has poor infrastructure management. This is another decades-long problem. The power sector may be considered a cesspool of corruption that may be compounded by irrational management. Frequent power outages lead to unstable situations. Regarding the situation of infrastructure, some have observed that if you set up a business in Nigeria, you have to set up your infrastructure. That tells you how bad the situation is. Ironically, a lot of the high profile or leaders travel overseas and see what infrastructure looks like. It is so painful to recognize this fact. It is so painful to recognize this fact. So there are some reforms that are needed. Nigeria's educational system used to be a source of pride in terms of quality output. Rather than have the best minds in charge of the educational sector, the current system appears to be infused with regional, zonal politics and ethnicity, resulting in dubious and quality product output. Also, the government is not investing appropriately in education. The government should invest heavily in education. Looking at the last 4 years, the government has allocated a measly average of 6.37% of the national budget to the Federal Ministry of Education. 6.37% of the national budget to education. This is against the threshold of 15 to 25% as recommended by UNESCO. Regarding politics, Nigerian politicians are disgracefully incompetent, corrupt, and inherently greedy. It is a wonder that the electorate continues to tolerate them. These politicians seem to conveniently forget that they are in office to meet the demands of their citizens. It's pertinent to remind these politicians that, quote, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Hopefully, an educated and enlightened electorate should drive home the message. Regarding economic reforms, it is relevant that social and political issues are addressed. Nigeria seemingly appears to be endowed with kleptomaniacal and dishonorable officials, such that even the FCC and the Ministry of Justice are allegedly entangled in neck-high, corruption-laden malfeasance. Indeed, Nigeria appears to have evolved from self-sustaining regions to panhandling states. Each state trying to maneuver what it can get from the center. With the human and natural potentials of Nigeria, the country can even do better than the United Arab Emirates, with the potentials that Nigeria has. Finally, using the small and medium enterprises, SMEs, Nigeria, if we use that as a roadmap, Nigeria has a chance to address some of her national integration challenges. With the spread of the SMEs across the country, this federally directed program has the potential to integrate the country through socio-economic development. Now, so much attention has been given to the SMEs for their potential to drive Nigeria's development plans. Consequently, capital-intensive large-scale projects have been de-emphasized. The SMEs are now prioritized by the 3 tiers of government in order to drive socio-economic development. Based on a 2017 report, it is evident that the small and medium enterprises could play a catalytic role in the socio-economic development, developmental transformation of Nigeria. In 2017, there were 41.5 million registered SMEs. 41.5 million registered SMEs. In 2012, it was just a measly 5 million. So we've gone from 5 million in 2012 to 41.5 in 2017. Now, these are registered SMEs. Now, although, and this is almost over 700% increase. Although the registered SMEs appear to be impressive, collectively, there are only about 73,000 formal employing SMEs in Nigeria. Only about 73,000 formal employing SMEs. In other words, they employ between 10 and 300 citizens. So there are 73,000 compared to 250,000 in South Africa. Compared to 250,000 in South Africa. Now, SMEs are the backbone of the American and European economies. In the United States, there are about 30 million SMEs, accounting for nearly 2/3 of net new private sector jobs, 30 million. In Nigeria, in order to promote economic development in the long run, it is important to increase the number and competitiveness of these enterprises. Technological innovations in communication and transportation could shrink the distance that separates states and improve speed, efficiency, and economy of geographically dispersed areas. National integration could be facilitated and enhanced by government policies through zonal economic integration and the removal of artificial barriers that separate communities. Although the SMEs have a presence in each of the 6 zonal areas and their local government areas, like most things Nigerian, SMEDAN, which is the agency responsible for management of the SMEs, has its own challenges in terms of inadequate funding, again, tribalism, nepotism, and lack of enlightenment. A lot of Nigerians are not aware of the SMEs. Now, if these challenges are resolved, SMEDAN will continue to facilitate the expanded growth of the SMEs across the nation. And let me end with a saying from Maya Angelou, quote, if, quote, unquote, quote, you can only become great at that thing you are willing to sacrifice for. You can only become great at that thing you are willing to sacrifice, unquote. Thank you.
A big thank you, Prof. That was excellent. Please, everyone, wherever you are, can you raise your hands, give him a thumbs up, a round of applause? Thank you for that in-depth discussion, Professor Cyril Volker. And in fact, we were wondering at the point where you were going that, oh no, this is quite a history lesson, a flashback in time. So thank you once again, Professor Cyril Volker Abobo, for the wonderful delivery. We thank you so much. And now quickly, so that we can work with the timeline we've actually around, designed for this particular discourse, please, I would want us to quickly welcome the Kapun for the National Association of Sea Dogs. And thereafter, we would also take a remarks by Dipo Ashafa for the Wole Soyinka. And then we shall also now invite Kadara Ahmed to come respond to her point of view on the discourse, as well as, in fact, respond also to what Professor has also talked about. And then we will invite Ankyo Briggs and, of course, our Dr. Odekunle will be here to conclude the discussion. So all of us here, please get ready your questions. We see some of you already are stating all your questions and putting them in the chat box. Please continue to do that. We'll be having the time to really discuss this. And we're looking forward to Kadara Ahmed talk about her point of view on this matter and the questions that will follow afterwards, hoping that she would also be able to respond to the questions that will come from her own speech and response to these discuss on national integration and Panacea for socio-economic development in Nigeria. And quickly, please, let us welcome the Kapun of the National Association of Sea Dogs, Emmanuel Bahabo Esquire, to now give his welcome address. Good to have you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Distinguished keynote speaker, Professor Abobo, eminent discussant, Professor Femi Odekunle, Madam Kadera Mohammed, Madam Ankyo Briggs, and our dear moderator, Lady Ejiro Umokoro. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure and honor to welcome you to yet another edition of the Wole Soyinka Annual Lecture Series organized by the National Association of Sea Dogs, the Pirates Confraternity. This lecture series, which is in its 23rd year, provides a platform to discuss national and global issues on the one hand and provide solutions on the other hand, as part of our contribution to good governance and development in Nigeria and the world. More importantly, this lecture series, instituted to celebrate a global icon, Professor Wole Soyinka, is to draw attention to all what he has devoted a greater part of his life fighting for. He remains the conscience of our nation and a great inspiration to all lovers of justice, democracy, and equality. Today, the constraints of the COVID-19 pandemic ravaging the world has necessitated a virtual lecture. This, however, would not take the shine of the quality of presentation from the keynote speaker and the discussants. It is instructive to note that this year's theme is national integration, Panacea for Socioeconomic development. It speaks to the core of Nigeria's problem. We've all witnessed the rise in ethnic nationalism, the rise of ethnic militias, and the destabilization that has caused the country. And that has made it more important that there's a discourse about national integration, and all of us has to be conscious if we want to move together in this project called Nigeria on how we are about to achieve that. And that is the essence why this lecture was put together. What the National Association of CDOCs had proposed in the past was to propose legislation along these lines towards national integration. This is all part of our synthesizing opinions of great opinion leaders that will eventually form the focus of what our advice to policymakers would be on how to achieve national integration. I thank you all. This is just supposed to be a welcome address, and I urge you to sit back and enjoy from our eminent discussants as we try to find a solution for our great nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. We appreciate that, our Esquire, the Capone for the NAS worldwide, and he has just given us his welcome speech. And quickly, we will go over to the remarks by Dipo Ashafa. And after the remarks, we're going to be inviting Ms. Kadaria Ahmed to come on board to talk.
Good afternoon. The head of the National Association of CDOCs, Barrister Ima Bahabo. Distinguished keynote speaker today, Professor Cyril Abobo, distinguished discussants, members of the executive of the National Association of CDOCs, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm speaking in place of Professor Wole Soyinka, who is unavoidably absent today. He appreciates this annual lecture series, which started over 20 years ago, and wish to thank and commend the organizers and all others who are participating in this virtual program. The choice of today's keynote speech is very apt, as it is coming at a period when many Nigerians have concerns about proper integration of various segments and geopolitical zones in the country, whilst even some Nigerians are concerned about our national unity. I'm sure that Professor Wole Soyinka will have been pleased to be here to hear directly from the eminent lecturer and also the very highly distinguished and capable team of discussions. However, I will ensure, and I hope, that the organizers will have a video recording of this program. I will ensure that the video recording gets to him, because I'm sure he will appreciate everything said today. Once more, to the National Association of CDOCs and all others, I thank you on behalf of Professor Wole Soyinka and pray for a successful completion of this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Esquire, Dipo Ashafa Esquire, for that straight to the point that you've just given us with regards to the remarks. And we thank the Prof for sending in that across to us. So plenty goes us to him as well from here to us to them. And now we will be inviting Kadaria Ahmed to please come over, step on the webinar floor, as it were, to come and give a response to the discourse we have on today, and also perhaps react to what Professor Abobo has also talked about on the national integration, a panacea for socio-economic development in Nigeria. Ms. Kadaria Ahmed, a good pleasure to have you here.
Hello, hi. I'd just like to check whether the audio that can you hear me okay? Am I coming through clearly?
Loud and clear, we do.
Excellent. Okay, well, first off, let me say thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of this significant conversation. And particularly to the organizers who sort of, thought that it was important to have this dialogue. I'm a big believer in conversations. even about the most uncomfortable issues that face a country, because I actually think if you don't deal with those issues, then they sort of just lay in waiting for you. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of this. I think sometimes when I listen to Nigerians talk about our problems, I think there's almost, if I'm being, sort of kind and generous, then what I say is that sometimes is a degree of naivety in the way we sometimes discuss our problems. We talk about nation building as if there is any modern nation that came into being fully formed. Nation building is a process. It takes time, and it takes a deliberate series of steps to actually build cohesion and to build, a country that people feel they all belong to. And I think that sometimes when you listen to Nigerians talk about nation building, it's almost as if there is a ghost somewhere that is supposed to come and build Nigeria for us, rather than, us building Nigeria. So that's number one. Number two, we sometimes talk about our leaders almost as if, again, they drop from heaven, as if they are not people that come from among us and therefore represent our values and the things that we've sort of focused on as a nation. I think one of the founding fathers of America, and I can't remember which president it was, said that a river can never rise higher than its source. So in many ways, the leadership that we have, or that we have had throughout the ages, is a reflection of the people that we are. So I just wanted to put that on the table before I sort of deal with some of the issues that were put together. I personally do not believe that Nigeria has a problem of tribalism and a problem of ethnic strife. I think Nigeria has a governance problem, and ethnicity is a symptom, and all the other ills that we see, nepotism, all is a symptom of the fact that we've not managed to put in place institutions and systems that mean we're not dependent on individuals. Part of it is, of course, the legacy of military rule. We had a civil war where issues were never fully resolved, and then the army took over, brutalized everybody, made it difficult for us to hold them accountable. And I mean, a lot of my friends who are foreigners are sometimes astonished at the kind of things that our governments get away with. Because on the global stage and even on the African stage, Nigerians are supposed to be really vocal and confident people. But somehow when it comes to holding leaders accountable, we're very shy. We don't take to the streets. So atrocity after atrocity, things keep going on. And that culture of protest, which was part of my culture as a university student in Nigeria, has died. And I think part of it is, again, because we have focused for too long, we allowed ourselves to focus on the symptoms rather than the problems. And so it has become very difficult to build consensus around Nigeria. So we started having conversations about whose thief is better than the other person's thief. If a person is accused of a crime, the first thing you hear is people from his place carrying placards and protesting, on the streets. This may not look like big things, but they are actually really major things. They are damaging because what they do is that they encourage identity politics. And identity politics globally are dangerous. They're the reason you have rising far-right white nationalism across the world. They're the reasons why in Nigeria you cannot hold anybody accountable, because it becomes an ethnic issue. Oh, it's because he's Fulani, no, it's because he's Yoruba, no, it's because he's Igbo. And the problem is when you've got a public, okay, like I'll call them like a ruling class that is as greedy as our own, as corrupt as our own. They have no conscience. They will use whatever tool they have at their disposal to divide us. And so you can't hold the sort of leaders that we have accountable if you continue to do it on the basis of region, language, culture. You must be able to come together as a people holistically and say, listen, these are our values as a people, and we're not going to accept it regardless of who the offender is. It has been impossible to have that sort of conversation in Nigeria precisely because of these kind of problems. I mean, you could sort of look at the historical issues, things like federal character that the professor mentioned. Good intention, execution hasn't been great. I think execution, again, is a question of governance. Even in places like America, you've had affirmative action, you've had programs put together that were supposed to be designed to give slight helping hand to people who maybe had disadvantages historically. So in principle, these programs are not problematic in themselves. The problem comes in the way we sort of implement them. That goes contrary to the reasons why they were set up in the first place. And we implement them wrongly because we have the wrong people in charge. It's really that simple. And so for me, I've always felt if you really wanted to fix Nigeria, particularly under sort of the current democratic dispensation, you must fix party politics. It's really that simple, because the quality of leadership that we end up with is directly proportionate to the lack of democratic processes in political parties. So people who are not qualified, we end up, I mean, how many times have we gone to the polls where we're being forced to choose between the devil and the deep blue sea? And that will not change until our political parties begin to actually allow members to actually elect people on the basis of merit rather than other considerations. I think just wanted to talk about the fact that, some of the issues that we have, for example, go also beyond just tribe and language. Because as a woman, for example, in Nigeria, the current constitution also disadvantages me on the basis of my sex. So I think the professor, for example, spoke about the fact that I'm supposed to remain, in terms of appointment, I'm supposed to get appointment based on my state of origin and not my husband's. In practical terms, that doesn't work, because what happens is that you leave your people because of the way we marry culturally. You go to your husband's people, they never fully accept you. And then when it's actually time for appointments like that, you are neither here nor there. We saw a recent example with Nimi Akingube, who was appointed as an ambassador on the basis of her husband's states of origin. And somebody said, no, she has to go back to Rivers. The chances are that she does not have much of a life in Rivers, and she has spent her whole life in the Southwest because of the man that she married. And so this is where you have her network, her people. These are the people she understands, etc., etc. So what am I saying? I am saying we have a flawed constitution. Yes, we must change it. I am saying that the process of nation building is not an accident. We have to make up our mind. We want to be a nation, and then begin to actually build it one block at a time. I don't know of any country, any in the modern world, and if I'm wrong, there are professors here, somebody should correct me, that was fully formed, the way it is currently. Not even places like the United Kingdom. And even they continue to have issues, because, there are issues. Until Gordon Brown, the UK had never had a Scottish Prime Minister. So when you talk about, for example, the FCT never having a Southern mayor, it is true, but I'm just suggesting to you that these are not, sometimes we talk about our problems as if they are peculiar to Nigeria. And I'm saying that these are problems of nation building, these are problems of nationhood. And if we want to build a nation, then we have to do the hard work of building a nation. Nations do not fall from the sky fully formed. They take sweat, they take tears, sometimes they take blood. And that is what we need to start thinking about in terms of just the practical things that we need to do if we are convinced that we want a nation called Nigeria. There are, a few outliers who say we don't need a Nigeria and people, should be allowed to go off on their own. I'm not one of them, but I think that is a totally different conversation. I happen to think that in the world that we live in today, breaking up might be a little bit more difficult than staying together. But again, like I said, this is not the conversation here. But overall, I think there's a degree of honesty that is required in our self-reflection, which I don't see now. We do a lot of finger pointing. We point that way, we never look inwards. And if you look around the country, we don't have paradise anywhere. And so if the leaders that have been cheating Nigeria, stealing from Nigeria, and generally raping Nigeria had been doing it on the basis of tribe and religion, we would at least have one Dubai somewhere, you know? Because a lot of what they will be doing would be focused on looking after their people. But we know that that has not happened. We've had the Niger Delta president. As far as I understand it, there's still gas flaring. The water is still not drinkable. And there are issues that are going on there. The North is on its knees, despite having presidents, you know, from the North for a very long time. The point I'm making is that it will be a mistake to keep thinking that these people that have been in charge of Nigeria have been in charge of Nigeria on behalf of a particular ethnic or tribal group. They've been in charge of Nigeria on behalf of themselves and the class that they belong to, a ruling elite. So Buhari and Akpabio have more in common than a regular boy sitting in Daura and Katsina or a boy sitting somewhere in Akwa Ibom. That is the class that we all should be focusing on to reform and to get more of good people into in order to change this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Kadara Mohammed. Ahmed, rather. I tend to go with the Mohammed. I don't know why it just comes. It's so common. So, Ms. Kadara Mohammed, thank you.
It's a compound name. It's Mohammed Ahmed, so that's fine.
Mohammed, okay, because I'm going with the one you use on the fly. So I'm like, okay, let's stick with that one. Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate those 2 6 points you actually raised. And we got some questions that I think it would be nice for you to just quickly respond to some of them, because I think they relate exactly to a key point you raised with regards to the kind of politics we play, regards to, is it a decision, conscious decision we're making with agreeing with ourselves that we need to deliberately create Nigeria. So there was a question that is from Gobari, and he says, is there anything wrong with the activities of the organization like Arawa or Hanez Ndigbo in the light of the tenets of national integration, looking at the current governance in Nigeria? Because you actually raised some of these key points about how we do not protest, how we have given up on protesting. So this question, if you can respond to that, what would you say?
So I don't have fundamentally a problem with associations that focus on people from a geography, as long as they are cultural. I think that works because, you know, culture is really important. Culture is significant in promoting a healthy identity where you are sort of proud of where you come from and you enjoy some of the things that being from your place come with. And as a result of being grounded in who you are in a better position to also then relate to others and share and be an equal partner in an exchange. Once these things become political, I think is a very slippery slope. You then start going into identity politics. And like I said, I don't believe in identity politics. I think they're dangerous. I think they're divisive. I think they stop you from actually focusing on building institutions that can work for everybody equally. And in a place that has the sort of diversity that Nigeria has, identity politics will do nothing but wreck us. Even in the most homogeneous places, they've been damaging. Somalia has been without a central government, I think, getting to 40 years now. They speak the same language. They are from the same general ethnic group. They worship the same way. But identity politics there meant clans. And that has basically wrecked the country. Till today, they don't have a central government. I think Siad Barre was the last president of Somalia. And so you have to look beyond your sort of, there's nothing wrong with being proud of your culture, your language and understanding. And even as Black people, given what is happening globally now, it is really important that culturally people are rooted in who they are. It can become the basis of really healthy relationships with other people, but it cannot supersede being human. You know what I mean? It's really, that is just what it is. Yes.
So we need to honestly begin to actually ask ourselves personal questions with regards to how we play even our personal identity politics. Because at the end of the day, at the root of it is, if you're driven by identity politics, it's going to be getting more divisive rather than integrate
That is
people.
what I believe. I honestly believe that. I do.
Right. And then let me ask you a quick one. You're talking about protest. I mean, you and I think we belong to that generation where we also grew up knowing that protest is the way to demand and speak truth to power, is the way to also demand for better governance and kick out bad governance. But here is the thing. When youth are questioned about, you need to take Nigeria, it's yours to take. I made that comment to a young man and he went, like, what are you saying? This is too much to take on. So the self-defeatism came up. You could just see it in the face. So my question to you is, we are the generation that ought to have kickstarted what should be. This is the conversation. But then how are we handing over the baton, as it were, to the younger generation, not to emulate the mistakes and the errors we have continued to perpetuate in the drive towards building and creating what you say is not a ghost, it's our ownership. How do we change that?
Look, there is nothing that is happening in Nigeria that is accidental. So it's really important we understand that if you do A, B is going to follow, and C and D and E and F, which is why the historical context is important, right? There's nothing that is happening today that we could not have predicted because of the trajectory we set for ourselves and the sort of journey we decided to go on, right? But what I'm saying is that the time has perhaps come to start rethinking all these things that we think were correct. You know, if you look at the way people access resources in this country, because of federal character, because of all the things that have been put together, the ethnic identity became the channel in some places through which you access state resources. So, you know, if you look at the forms, the official forms that people fill, they will ask you state of origin, they will ask you local government area, they will ask you all sorts of things. And so there is a way in which we designed ourselves to go that way. And which is why, you know, I'm kind of happy that already there are conversations happening, and there are a few states beginning to do it, but are saying, you know what, we're banishing state of origin, we're going to focus on residents. If you live here, this is your state. If you have an ID card that shows you pay all your taxes in this particular state, you're going to be able to access all of the resources that you are entitled to as someone who's resident here. And it doesn't matter if you were not born here or your parents were not born here. Those are the kind of things that we need to start doing. These are practical things that within a very short period of time can actually change things around. In terms of the younger generation, I think some of them, partly because of what is happening globally, there's a sort of mind shift that I've seen, at least among the people that I sort of talk to, who are beginning to question some of the old ways of doing things. I'm part of a group that is unveiling a major campaign on Monday titled It Starts With Me. And it's all about saying, what can you do in your little space? And it's not big things. It doesn't have to be massive. Nation building is not one big event. You know what I mean? It's little things, little steps. Excellence in your area. Recruit people based on merit if you have an organization. Don't go to your village and bring everybody that speaks your language to work for you. You know, little things like that. In your neighborhood, you know, clean the street. You know, stop throwing trash out of the window. Little things like that. And then before you know it, it becomes something that changes mindsets, because we also have a culture that we need to change.
Thank you so much, thank you so much, Ms. Kadari Ahmed. We appreciate that. And we'll have more questions for you. There's quite a lot that has come in, and we want you to respond to these questions. So quickly now, we are going to move on to our next discussant, Ms. Ankyo Briggs, an environmentalist and human rights activist. Please, madam, you have the webinar floor. Let's have your contribution on this national discourse.
Okay. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Wonderful. Okay, now I must thank the lecturer, because he took everything in its stage and really simplified what would ordinarily perhaps be a very difficult topic if he was trying to be politically correct. And I found that he's my type of a lecturer. He wasn't trying to be politically correct, maybe because he doesn't live with us in Nigeria. So maybe that's part of some of the solutions. But definitely I was very impressed. And I was taking notes when he was giving the lecture, for the simple fact that I got the paper this morning, and I thought, well, you know what, let me just wait and take it in as it is being given to me. And I think it will be better that way. Now, very quickly, I think that I will end up sharing, going in the direction of a word I learned this week during the funeral of Congressman John Lewis. And I love the word because I came to realize that that is actually what I have been doing for the past 20-something odd years, getting into good trouble. And and so I think that I'm going to get into good trouble now. National integration, federal character, which then therefore, when it was set up, and even the youth service, were all put together. The national, the federal character was first brought on board in the 1979 Constitution, and horrifically, it never was introduced properly, if you like, or inaugurated until 2002. That's 23 odd years. So it gave me the acceptance immediately that even though the Constitution was put together at that time, it was, if it was implemented, it was implemented to for a section of Nigeria. And that, of course, brings us to the sentiments of ethnic nationality. Now, we have agreed, and the Prof has also mentioned it, and a lot of us know that there is about 250, some say 250, some say 350, but I know that in the Niger Delta of the 6 states of the Bray states, we have many ethnic nationalities. In Delta State, we have ethnic nationalities. It is only in Bayelsa State that the state is only of Ijaw people. But the other 5 states, we have different ethnic nationalities. So for me, I've always known that I refuse, and it's not in me. I cannot, for any reason, whether for Nigeria or for whatever, disregard my ethnic nationality. And I think that this is why we're finding it difficult to accept that you cannot be patriotic to Nigeria if you are not, first of all, patriotic to Yoruba, for instance. If you're a Yoruba man, you have to be a patriotic Yoruba man to the Yoruba people, and so on and so forth. So if I have never keyed into the idea that to be a good Nigerian, that I have to be a bad Ijaw person, you have to, first of all, be the best Ijaw person you can be, and before you can become a good Nigerian and effect a patriotic Nigerian. Now, the issue of federal character was put together so that the civil service, so that our development, our economy, our investment, security, employment, healthcare can actually be delivered. All of these things can be delivered on the basis of equity and justice, on the basis of equality, not from where you come from, because we're all getting the same quality care, we're all getting the same quality education. But now quickly, if I even touch on the issue of education, I saw the Civil War. I was in my teenage years when the Civil War of Nigeria kicked off for the 3 years, and I know what I went through. And nobody can teach me about the Civil War or about what war is like. But there are some people in Nigeria that were born at the same age with me, but were not in the then eastern part or in the then river state, so cannot even begin to imagine what people like us went through during the Civil War. For me, those issues, like resolving the issue of the vanquished, or there is no conqueror, there is no vanquished, there is no, that's not true. There was a war, somebody lost the war and somebody won the war. So to turn around and say that those issues should be swept under the carpet, where a man who had even my family members, all of us had to start all over again with 20 pounds, whether you had hidden 2 million under your bed and it was eaten up during the war, and you had only 500,000 left, you were left with 20 pounds, so there were people that lost everything during the war, and they were not in Eastern region. Now, definitely the education is lopsided. When you have to say that somebody in Enugu State cannot access entrance of a university or a secondary school unless their cutoff mark is 100 and something. And yet the same admission says that somebody from Kano State or somebody from Zamfara State can come with a lower cutoff mark. That's already discrimination right there. That is already nepotism right there. That is already, you can attribute anything you want to attribute to it. You can even look at it from the religious background, if you like. So these are the issues that we must address. We know the problem. I knew the problem from when I was brought back to Nigeria at such a tender age, as I said, because those things, those experiences are relative to what we're discussing in Nigeria today and how we want to fix Nigeria, and not whether you have 10 PhD or what. It is what your experience are and what you want to happen in Nigeria. Now, there is no justice and equity in Nigeria, and until we begin to find the justice and equity that works for us, we have 36 states in Nigeria, and we have 6 zones, political zones for now. Somebody may come along tomorrow and change it. Abacha brought about the zones. Somebody may come along and change it, but until then, that is what we have. So if we really, truly want to fix Nigeria, we must start, in my opinion, we must start to begin the fixing of Nigeria from where we are and from whom we are. Now, we have 36 states, we have 6 zones. We have to decide whether the 36 states must be run as a federation, so that you have the issue of employment, healthcare, roads, social welfare, all of those things to be the responsibility of the state. Now, you can't do that when the federal government is taking 100% of what is coming from River State and taking it to Abuja and sharing it. For instance, the Constitution, everybody agrees, is a problem. But how do we fix it? Well, let me share with you how I believe, looking at it from my point, how we can fix it. Now, if you are taking 100% of what is coming to me, and then a state like Kano has 44 local governments, and a state like River State, where I come from, has 23 local governments. Kano, when they share allocation every month of what they've taken from River State, Kano is going to take 44 states. Why should Kano have 44 states? Oh yes, because they say Kano is larger. Who told you that? When was the last census? How do we know that Kano is still the number that it was when they did the last census, and that River State is still what it was? And local governments are created, we're told, by numbers. Are people not being born in River State or Bayelsa State that has 8 local governments? So these are the issues that we have to tackle. Nigeria really, we don't want to say it, but Nigeria is a very discriminatory country. And if we say we're not discriminatory, then we must allow a system where we keep what we have. A few weeks ago, it's official that they can explore and mine for gold in any part of the north where they have solid minerals. But that does not apply to River State. There is no license for people to refine oil, and we've proved that we can refine kerosene. Our people have proved that they have this capacity. Now, when you go into when you look at this imbalance, then if you say that I should not identify myself as an Ijaw person, what then do I identify myself in? As Nigerian? No, there is nothing right now in Nigeria that is working in the favor of my people. So I refuse to identify myself first as a Nigerian. I am an Ijaw person first, and then a Nigerian, because whether I'm a Nigerian or not, I will remain an Ijaw person. This is our realities, and we have to find solutions to that. Now, the colonial government left a system for us. We must get rid of those things that don't work in the system that the colonial government have left for us. We cannot continue to work with those things, those methods, and begin and say that that is what we are used to. No, we must change those things that don't work. Now, the unity of Nigeria is not encouraged by these highlights facts that the lecturer have told us. Hopefully, all of us are also aware of what he has said. Now, to me, ethnicity is a very passionate concept because that is who I am. I speak my language, and a second language I speak in Nigeria is Igbo. Any other person that speaks besides me, I can assume that he's planning to sell me. And so the thing, therefore, is that we have to first be sensitive to each other's needs. We don't necessarily have to be the person that will solve the other person's needs. Nigeria is not set up like that. But we have to respect that we are all in Nigeria. And we have to accept that what I have may not be what you have. But it doesn't give you the right to sit somewhere, hold a press conference, and keep shouting, the oil in Bayelsa, it belongs to this state. The oil in Bayelsa belongs to somewhere in the north. And you continuously agitate and irritate people. Now, we're coming up to 2023. And unless you block your ears with cotton wool, you keep hearing, 1 minute the North will retain power. The next minute, the North will not retain power. And then the people are tossed backwards and forward. Look, Obasanjo did 8 years as a Yoruba man of the South. Yaradua did 207 to 209 when unfortunately he died. And Jonathan took over. Jonathan finished Yaradua's tenure. He did it. Who voted for Jonathan in 2010? Nobody. So he was finishing his boss's tenure as per the constitution. And yet people are counting it for the South-South. For me, I don't really care. I don't even want the South-South to run for presidency anymore. I want us to have control, full access to our resources. Let us agree what tax we're going to pay to federal government. That is what is of the greatest importance to me. The governors are the ones that should be responsible for the state. Federal government has no business in building a road in Abia State. It should be the problem of Abia governor. But how can Abia governor build a road in Abia State if he is either misusing the money or the money is not enough? And yes, when people talk about corruption, when you say you're fighting corruption and the people that are corrupt, all of them are from one side of Nigeria, that in itself is a lie. Every part of Nigeria is corrupt, every part. I can only speak for myself. I'm not a politician. I've not been in politics. I'm not corrupt. I don't cheat people when I sell them things. I'm not corrupt. But people who have access to our money. Nobody knows how much is. As I'm talking to you now, I just heard that for about 2 or 3 months, the governors of the South have not received their federal constitutional allocation. I'm wondering, why are they not talking? There must be a reason why this information is not coming out. And why is the federal government holding onto these funds that belong to the people of the Niger Delta? We have the corruption of the issue of NDDC. This NDDC corruption started in 2020 when they inaugurated it. So if you want to find out, you must go that far back. I don't care if my father was there. You must go back that far back. Then you have a situation of Magbo, who was going around identifying thieves and people who have looted, and yet he also now finds himself in that mess. And where is this going? And then you have the corruption issue of the 9 Mobile issue. How did it come about? How did one person get to buy 9 Mobile? And we're told how it happened. It may not be true, but we need to find out, is it true or is it not true? You know, so the Constitution holds us back, everybody one way or the other. But I believe mainly it holds back the southern part of Nigeria. Well, to continue to highlight the governance of Jonathan is the same constitution that Jonathan was working under. Now, what is funny is this: my own people, the Ijos and the Niger Delta people, have a lot they have to say against Jonathan. And I don't disagree with them, but I don't talk like that. Now, the reason why I'm raising this is this. At the time that Jonathan was there, if he had said to Julius Berger, I command you this morning, move to East-West Road, build that road. If you don't finish building it, don't come back. If he had done that, it's the same people that will get up and shout, how can he do that? And yet it's exactly the same thing that we accuse Jonathan of not doing for his people, that we are now saying that Buhari is doing for his people. So what exactly is it that Nigerians are saying that they want? The educated ones, the intellectual ones, have to be able to let the people they claim that are not educated and intellectual to understand the solution. And if they don't, then the people who are uneducated and don't have the intellect will have to take their life in their hands and begin to do what they must do. Where did we come from that we're piping gas from Niger Delta all the way up to Kogi, into Kaduna and into Kano? There is a plan to do the same all the way to Algeria. There is this plan to do, Dangote has 650 barrels per day capacity of refinery in Lagos, not in Niger Delta. All the rights of economic development tells you that as much as you can, you stay close to where your raw material is. And then you now put the refinery in Lagos, and the raw material is in my backyard, and you're going to lay pipes, and I'm watching you. You're laying pipes to take my resources all the way to Lagos. And you think that even though people are not educated, when they see the pipes, they're not going to say, what is happening here and where is this going? No, it is about truth and justice and equity. We need to tell ourselves the truth. There is tribalism, there is nepotism, there is corruption in Nigeria. The people you're talking to today now, people like you, moderator, your age group that you're talking to, they were born into a Nigeria in which their parents were afraid, were fearful. People like Professor Wole Soyinka, they ran away because they were going to be killed. Why? So the people you are expecting to protest, I've organized protests all over Nigeria, in Abuja, in Port Harcourt, in Bayelsa. The last one I did, I was beaten up in Bayelsa. Physically, I was attacked. not by Fulani people, not by Yoruba people, not by Igbo people, by my own Ijaw people, because they didn't agree with me. What was I protesting for? I was saying that they had ceded 1,200 hectares of plush land. Bayelsa is just swampy. And the only land available was given to headsmen by the governor. And I said, no, don't. We don't have land in Bayelsa State. Thugs were sent to beat me up in broad daylight. This is the type of country we live in. This is the type of government that we have. The idea to change Nigeria must start at the roots, at the grassroots. We, the educated and intellectuals or whatever, must start. Is our responsibility, not the responsibility of the fisherman, not the responsibility of the man that they are giving the type of iron we used in secondary school to for his business to iron agbada and things like that. You know, that is no way going to improve anybody's life. And the people giving them these things, their children are being educated in all types of Ivy League universities and things, whether they qualify or not, I don't know, but they also were aware that Nigerians also donate 400 million to a particular university because their children graduated there. And the fisherman's child is going to graduate from where? You know, so the reality is that Nigeria is broken. Nigeria is, we can't even begin this plaster that we're using to fix Nigeria. It won't work. Let us agree that the only way is let the states take responsibility. If you say you don't, let the states that agree on that work with that. Nigeria is a federation. Let it be a federalism. People are being killed in Kaduna. How does that unite us? The people that are being killed are Christians. How can that unite us? You know, so if we're not able to talk about that because we are afraid, what are we going to be able to fix in Nigeria? So when we start talking about fixing Nigeria, that we're trying to fix Nigeria, that Nigeria cannot break up. Why can Nigeria not break up? People were minding their own business when my mother's people came and fixed Nigeria the way they wanted to fix Nigeria and left us in the mess that they left us in. That mess is not working. Why can't we now, that if we say we're Nigerians, then we should try and fix Nigeria. But we should try and fix it from the perspective of Yoruba man. And one thing has always bothered me. When they created Northern Nigeria, Western Nigeria, and Eastern Nigeria, and now say that there are 3 major ethnic nationalities. You say, what? 3 ethnic major nationalities? What about the other 300 or 250 that Professor has in his book? Who are they? Are they servants of those nationalities? You know, so already when you say there are 3 major nationalities, already you have discounted me. I'm not a nationality as far as Nigeria is concerned. And so when they fixed, they changed Nigeria, Northern Nigeria, West and East, where was South? Where is South? Who are the people that occupy the South of Nigeria? It is us, and yet we're not mentioned in the clarification of who is a Nigerian. You can't hear Southern Nigeria only when they are talking about Northern Nigeria, which is 19 states, and then Southern Nigeria, which is 17 states. So when they share allocation, the North is getting much more than the people who are actually producing the wealth. Kano does not produce oil or gas, and yet Kano gets more resources from oil and gas by local government allocation. These are not fair. And so if we're not going to address these issues, then I don't really believe that we are ready to keep Nigeria one. And if we're not ready to keep Nigeria one, then we must accept that we have a right to be able to go our separate ways. And whatever that means, then let it be, because we cannot be in a worse off situation than we are right now. Thank you very much.
If we could give you a round of applause right now, we would do it, but our mics are muted. I want to thank you very much for your brutal honesty in this conversation here, Ms. Anki Briggs. Thank you so much. And now I see all your questions. I see the hands that have been raised. Daniel Jegede, I just want to acknowledge you. Ayola Olowufuyeku, I hope I got that right. And then someone with a galaxy, and Zubi Agboifo. I see your hands. We'll be taking your questions later on. For all those who are making comments, awesome. Thank you for sending in your comments into the chat box. We will take all of them. And now quickly, for a man who has stood the entire length, listen to everybody from Professor Abobo to Anki Briggs to Kadara Ahmed, and now his turn. I want to thank you, sir, Professor Femi Odekunle, our renowned defense and security expert. It is time for you to have the webinar floor. Thank you for joining us here today, sir.
Can you acknowledge that you can hear me?
I hear you loud and clear, sir. Very clear.
Thank you very much. First of all, my respects to the keynote speaker and fellow discussants. I'm honored to participate in this webinar in honor of the person the world knows as WS, and we pirates know as Captain Blood. To us, it remains a light on the hilltop. Now, to the topic at hand, which has to do. Hello? Are you able to follow me?
We can
Yes.
hear you.
Okay. I was saying that to go to the topic, which is national integration as a panacea for socio-economic development, I think I'm going to go to the root of Kadaria, who seems to have initiated the line of my thoughts. If you go by that topic, the postulation is an XY situation. It is like national integration is the consequence. Is the consequence of whatever of a socio-economic development. The implication of the hypothesis, no hypothesis, is to say that once you have national integration, there will be socio-economic development. That is my understanding. That's what the topic suggests, that as soon as you have a national integration, there will be socio-economic development. To test the veracity of this postulation, there are things we have to talk about. For example, what do we mean by development? To me, I've always said that development is not so much the aggregate of your GDP or GMP or the aggregate of your forex or export or import, but actually development to me as a social scientist means the improvement in the quality of life, socio-economic life, existence of the average citizen, the overwhelming majority of average citizens, in such a way that such improvement over time gets increasingly evenly distributed in the population. That is my understanding of development. Now, if you say that, what is the status of development in this country cumulatively over time? I'm not talking about the present government. I'm talking about cumulatively. What is the status of development as I've just briefly defined it? Economically, we suffer from youth unemployment, social poverty, with the gap between the rich continues to widen. As of now, about 10% of the population consumes in a very responsible manner about 90% of our resources. Politically, in terms of democracy, government is supposed to be the government of the people, by the people, for the people. But the way we have seen politically, the way our democracy has developed, it appears to be the government of the greedy, by the greedy, for the greedy, in which the few who are either elected or appointed to government offices, whether at the state, local government, or federal level, actually consumes all our resources through all kinds of avenues. Education-wise, education that used to be the envy of Africa and the world Now the quality and content is such that the interest, particularly for the elites, is now to send their children to private schools in Nigeria and abroad. If you go by infrastructure, whether it's roads, whether it's light, whatever, you discover that we have grave deficit all the time. And then if I could rewind a little bit, people confuse, that's when people want to ask me questions. People confuse development with growth. Development is not growth. You can grow or experience growth without development. That is why, for example, you have more policemen now than in 1960, but you have more crime. You have more churches, more mosques now, and yet you have less morality in the population. You have more houses of assembly, more state government, more commissioners, whatever in Nigeria now than in 1960. And yet government is far, far removed from the population in terms of dividends of democracy. So the point I'm trying to say is that when you talk about development, it is not the same thing as growth. I just have to bring that up, because when people are questioning, they may start talking about I'm sorry. So I was saying that so it is important to know the differentiation between development and growth. And I've talked. In dealing with the status of development, I've talked about the situation of our economy, the situation of our politics, of our education, of our infrastructure. And when you talk about security, Jesus Christ, before we had Boko Haram, Nigeria, since the 1970s, have started to experience what we call a problem of crime. I don't want to go into that definition. But since the Boko Haram started, we thought we were limited to the Northeast. But recently now you have this banditry, kidnapping, ransom taking all over the country. And in terms of integrity, we can't touch more about integrity now. If you look at the litany of probes without result from 1976 during the time of Murtala Mohammed to last week, the NDDC, the Social Trust Fund, whatever. When you talk about integrity, you talk about intergovernment, international squabbles like never before, like we have between the Inspector General of Police and the Police Service Commission, between the Ministry of Labor and the NSITF, between Ministry of Justice and EFCC. You can go on and on. These are indications that integrity is actually not making what we thought. What about legalized corruption, whereby in most states the lawmakers make laws and abuse rule of law by saying, well, when the governor leaves the place, he can earn maybe millions of naira per month. Himself and his wife and children can always go abroad at the expense of the state. And he has houses in the capital and in the state capital and the federal capital. And all kinds of allowances being granted by the members of the National Assembly to themselves. These are indications that integrity actually is not making progress in terms of our development. So the point I'm trying to make is that in all major indices of development cumulatively, we can say that our development has experienced a low output. Now, can we say that the explanation for this situation of our development output is actually due to lack of national integration? As a social scientist, I insist no. I will tell you that the underdevelopment that we have been experiencing in this country actually is underpinned by the underpinning of our principle of social organization, briefly, which is that individualism and individual success measured by material wealth. And from there has emerged a dominant ethos of the primacy of individual interests over collective interests. This dominant ethos I'm talking about of the primacy of individual interest over collective. It's manifested in the way we make our laws. That is why they've made laws against kidnapping or armed robbery with death penalty. But despite the damage of corruption to our polity, they have never attempted to make a law of death penalty. After all, in China, within a week after you are found to be corrupt, and if you are high level, you are executed. It is only the lower level that are sent to prisons for reformation. So this dominant ethos is manifested in our laws. It's manifested in the unjust pattern of the administration, which is why you steal a goat, you are given 10 years to teach you a lesson. And when you steal billions of public money, you are either allowed to go by the Supreme Court that says that something technically is wrong, even after 14 years of trial, or they will fine you 3 million naira. The same ethos is manifested in our politics, is manifested in our economy, is manifested in our social relationship between individuals and groups. So the end result of this principle of social organization and the resultant ethos is such that it permeates all aspects of our public life. And the result is corruption. Corruption sabotages our good governance and our development. And when people talk about corruption, they only think in terms of money. I've been studying corruption since 1980, and I will tell you there are many types of corruption. There is political corruption, electoral corruption, which you all know. But there is policy corruption, which affects the Federal Character Commission that the guest speaker talked about, which affects almost all the things we do. When you are supposed to locate a particular industry or factory somewhere, you take it to another place. When you are supposed to admit or employ A and B, you employ C and D. These are examples of policy corruption. Then there, of course, there is professional corruption, whereby lawyers that are leaders of collaboration with corrupt people, accountants, bankers, auditors, quantity surveyors, architects, we can always argue that there is no corruption that could be conceived, executed, or covered up successfully without the collaboration of this elite profession. Then, of course, you have bureaucratic corruption, which has ruined our enviable public service. Our public service and judiciary used to be the talk of Africa and even the talk of our former colonial masters. But corruption has ruined our civil service, has ruined our judiciary. So, to me, the end result of our principle of social organization, individualism, and measurement of success by material wealth, and which has resulted in the dominant ethos of putting the interests of the individual below that of the collective, has resulted in corruption of all types. Not just a lot of corruption types of corruption that go on, they are such that they are more dangerous, even though they may be causal or consequential to the financial, but people always emphasize the financial. But I assure you that there are other types of corruption that are more dangerous than the financial. Now, the point I'm trying to push here is that the major culprit for our underdevelopment is not lack of national integration. In fact, whatever centrifugal manifestations that people have been mentioning that they are in this country, whether ethnicity, whether Niger Delta, whether the political or whatever, are actually manifestations of concept of corruption. I repeat, whatever centrifugal manifestations that calls into question the problem of integration, national integration, are themselves actually consequences of corruption. Now, if people are worried, what I'm trying to say is that up to today, corruption is a continuing, clear, and present danger to the viability, even not survival, of this polity. As I've tried to show that up to now, despite the leadership of an anti-corruption president, but this continues to go on because matter of corruption is not just managerial or administrative. It is fundamental to the principle of organizing society, and that which explains the continuation, despite the apparent determination of the leader by himself as a solo believer in anti-corruption. That explains the continuation. Now, when you say integration, let me tell you something. After all, if integration was the problem, we shouldn't have problem of development because our leaders all over Nigeria are integrated. Our elites are integrated. Is corruption not integrating them? Are they not corrupt all over the country? They all agree on that corruption is the way of life. Our leaders, are they not agreed, integrated about provision of medical treatment for themselves abroad, in private foreign schools? Are they not agreed on affluent mansions and lifestyles? Are they not agreed on arranged marriages for their children and choice employment in CBN and NPC for their children? Are they not agreed on exploitation of the overwhelming majority of the Nigerian population? Yet, despite this integration of our elite, who are supposed to be our leaders, there is no development. But the contrary is what we have been experiencing. So, my dear colleagues, in my own well-considered opinion, while devolution of powers and socioeconomic restructuring will be helpful and way development, the main panacea for socioeconomic development is the effective, efficient minimization of corruption in our public and corporate life. Let me repeat, because this is the crux of my contribution to this discussion. Now, I'm not against devolution of powers. In fact, I believe power should be devolved in many areas to the state and local government. Secondly, I'm not against restructuring, but not the political restructuring where politicians want to control their enclaves with the same corrupt system. And for socioeconomic restructuring, whereby, for example, doctors and teachers who decide to work in rural areas will earn about 25% more than those in urban areas. And for restructuring, socioeconomic restructuring, in a situation whereby people who go to polytechnic and who want to work in the area in technology will earn more than people who get degree in sociology or history or whatever. Those kind of restructuring we can go on. I'm not against that one. That's one way of developing our rural areas. And I see that it is important that in any public office, the lowest paid should not earn less than 10% of the highest paid. The lowest paid should not earn less than 10% of the highest paid. That is why I see what Kadaria says, that the barber and the tailor and the mechanic in Sokoto, they are suffering the same thing as the barber and tailor in my hometown Ilesha or in the hometown of Ankyo Bricks. And the elites of those people are all exploiters. They are collaborators. They are exploiters. And that they are the one giving us the impression that national integration is a problem. Our problem is what I've said that has led to corruption. Now, so I will say that as far as I'm concerned, the main panacea for socioeconomic development of this country is the effective and efficient minimization of corruption in our public and corporate life. When we do that, in fact, that will enhance integration in our life. Now, fighting corruption towards development requires about 4 broad items, and 3 of them are not available now. I repeat, to get development, we must fight corruption. And when we fight corruption, to minimize it, we need about 4 factors. And of these 4 factors, only one is available. For example, first, there must be a principle of social organization that results in an ethos which puts collective over individual interests. And the ethos must be manifested in the character, direction, and orientation of our criminal laws and their orientation. That one does not exist today. Secondly, we need a leadership that has character and integrity and is determined to fight corruption down to defeat. Now, that is available, except that it has a comma. That leads me to the third factor. A leadership that is not only strong with its character, but that will coerce and ensure that its leadership integrity cascade down to the elite collective, whether it's the party hierarchy, executive of its government, legislature of the country, the judiciary, the professionals, the religious leaders, the traditional institutions. That's the top factor. That leadership must not only be strong in its character and do baruana for the remaining, it must use legitimate force to coerce that integrity down to the whole of the elite collective. Now, I can prove to you that even the religious leaders are participating in corruption. Traditional rulers are participating in corruption. They didn't used to be. In fact, look at the academia. We didn't used to be corrupt, but now it has crept in. So it is a matter that it's an important matter. That is why the second factor, leadership, is important and is a necessary condition to fight corruption, but it's not a sufficient condition. To be sufficient, it has to cascade down. And fourthly, there must be an overall anti-corruption strategy that is implemented to the letter and spirit of the strategy. The reason why I said that is because about 2 weeks ago, Mahmoud Jega, a veteran a journalist, wrote an article in which he was responding to the vice president. The vice president had given a lecture to say that we have tried everything. There is need for a new methodology, a new strategy. So Jega was saying that he traced our response to corruption all through and said that nothing has worked. There's no more method or strategy. But of course, I called him to tell him that it's not true. It is true that we have tried almost everything. The only thing is that they have not tried anyone to the letter and spirit of the strategy. Take, for example, when Murtala Mohammed took over a government, and with immediate effect, a lot of people were deprived of their stolen property and wealth. What happened? IBB came, and he seemed to believe that corruption and settlement actually is the engine of running government, and they were returned to the people. It's the same thing when Murtala Mohammed. That was when. I'm getting that wrong. After Murtala Mohammed, that was reverted. Then when Shagari was removed, Buhari and Idiagbon did do a good job of instilling fear into the hand of our corrupt leaders. But IBB came in and, of course, and reverted that. And this is what we have been experiencing over time. So the laws and the methods have not been tried to the letter and their spirit. Like I pointed out earlier, what happens is China. You can say China is not a democracy. I doubt that, but I'm not going to that now. But Malaysia is a democracy. And their prime minister, their immediate last prime minister, has just been jailed 12 years. Which of your, okay, of course, we will be able to jail 2 governors in about 20 years to prison. But one of them you have just released by your judiciary, which amounts to play a rogue role, the role of a rogue in our anti-corruption fight. So the point is that it is important that every strategy you try must be executed to his letter and his spirit. The prime minister, Israel is a democracy. A prime minister and the president are going to jail. Which of your president has ever gone to jail? You may criticize them. You make noise. Is it from Ali Button, from Siemens, that this NSTIF now, NDC now, you can go on and on. We make noise 1 week, 1 month, it fizzles out. And then the next set again. So it's like Wole Soyinka's record, the one he was in 1980 or 81, when he talked with how many I go talk, because the thing is so numerous, so numbing, that by the time you get over one, and you are sure that this is happening, another one is coming again. When that one comes, you get worried. In another 2-3 months, another one. So it is not that the methods are not working. It is that no method is allowed to work to its letter and spirit. And if you really want to fight, to develop, you must fight corruption. And if you really want to fight corruption, you must do the needful by your laws and what your laws define, not this conspiracy of the elites, circulation of elites, whereby we're all doomed and our children are doomed. And then you are talking about what is there to be done. Now, my point is that it is only by killing corruption that we can bring development alive. I repeat, it is only by killing corruption that we can bring development alive and enhance national integration. It's surprised that I've turned the thing on its head. If you kill corruption, you will bring development alive. And if you bring development alive, the problem of national integration will be reduced. And as far as I'm concerned, this is where to go. Now, how do we bring that about? We cannot rely on these corrupt leaders who are consumptive, irresponsible, alienated to bring about the fight against corruption, let alone development. It depends on the grassroots. And the grassroots must attempt what amounts to a revolution in terms of taking their destiny into their hands and forgetting the adulation of 5,000 naira or bag of rice or whatever during election period, or being sent to Mecca or Jerusalem with their own money, and then they will adulate the assemblymen, or being buying grinding machine or whatever, and then they believe that their leaders are actually giving them dividends of democracy. Now it depends on all of us as teachers, as journalists, as academics, as rabble-rousers, to let the population, the downtrodden, to be aware, and to let them to be aware of their responsibility for a kind of cultural revolution, like they had in China, where everything had to be brought down, and then they started again, and in the next 10, 20 years, they are now at top of the world. If we are now relying only on the politicians to help us, or only on prayers in the mosques and churches, I think our grandchildren and great-grandchildren will continue to suffer this corruption and lack of development. And I hope they do not actually post curses on our heads in our graves. I thank you all, and once again, happy 18th birthday to CB.
Thank you so much, Professor Femi Odekunle, for that very positively disruptive conversation you just had with us. You have just shaken the minds of so many persons. And once again, I want to thank Professor Cyril Voke-Abobo for staying with us throughout this length of these discussions thus far. Thank you so much, Prof. We love you. We appreciate you standing by, because the attendants here, they want to communicate with you. They have questions for you. And we would now like you all, the speakers and discussants, to please respond to the questions that are being asked. Some persons are already raising their hands and they want to have answers to the questions that they're going to lay out. Like I said earlier at the opening of this conversation, we want to have a call for action that inspires and triggers something inside each one of us, that when we live here, we say we will go out to walk our talk, make the immediate spheres of influence, and not waiting for somebody else to take up leadership. So a number of questions have been asked, and let me quickly go to some of the questions that have been asked. Some of them were sent to, I'm just going to roll over the questions. It doesn't matter who it is directed to in some instances. I will just ask it as a general questions and expect a response from you. So I will start with you, Prof. Earlier on in your conversation, you did talk about regional loyalties. You talked about the need to define what indigenes really mean in the context of federal character principle, how both of them sometimes are not in congruence with each other. Kadara Mohammed talked about the issue of identity politics. And Ankil Briggs also talked about the need for self-identity in terms of even tribal, to the point of the tribal levels. Now, this conversation, they may look as if they are discordant tunes to so many persons listening in. So if you're going to respond to that issue there with regards to the regional loyalties, let's take note of that, identity politics, and this definition of self-identity to have self-actualization in the context of collective actualization for the Nigerian project. What would be your response to that, sir?
Well, I think looking at what we have, or what we term indigeneity, I think that should actually be not something Nigeria should be dealing with. For example, if I'm from Delta State, I live in Lagos State all my life, and I've established residence in Lagos. That's what I should be identified with, rather than quote from state of origin. We're talking about integration. I've moved to Lagos State. I spent all my life in Lagos State. My spouse, my children all live in Lagos State. I can't even identify with my original state. So definitely that's something that needs to be addressed. Now, you have certain situations where a spouse married to someone, say from River State, and aspires to become a judge, but that spouse, she cannot become a judge because, quote, she is from a different state. That's very, very undemocratic.
And how do we change this conversation now? What do you think we can take as a message that we can, going forward now, how do we begin to tackle this issue on a national level, at the state level, and get even governance, the state assemblies, to begin to see the need to begin to review some of these gaps in the constitution that we currently have?
Exactly, you nailed it. It has to do with the constitution. And that's where we have our problem. And that's where all these issues were installed. They were all installed in the constitution. And basically, this constitution was never approved by Nigerians. It's just a contraption that was just handed over to the country. So it needs to be redone by the citizens of the country. And basically, because of self-interest, the politicians are not willing to address this.
Right. Okay, but I think at the end of the day, it still falls back to what Professor Femi Odekunle really said, that is about grassroots movement and not settling for 5,000 and all the machines that will give you, that has no direct development to your life in terms of your livelihood and personal sense of existence. But then let's go to questions that were posted earlier on. Somebody made this comment: if we keep blaming bad governance as the main problem of Nigeria, how come since over 50 years since Nigeria independence, we're still suffering from bad governance? Does it mean we don't have good people or leaders in Nigeria, even as Nigeria, when we migrate to other countries, become bigger achievers? Does it not mean that there is something in the Nigerian project that pulls up this leadership? So this is a big elephant in the room that is being asked here. How do we begin to look at the issue of stop the conversation of blaming bad governance all the way?
But this one was, you think they had me?
Someone is speaking while I'm speaking. Please, can we mute the person speaking, please?
I think it also has to do with the enlightenment of the population, because populations, like one of the speakers did say, they can be easily manipulated on an ethnicity basis. So basically, they look up to these elite individuals, and these elite individuals are supposed to, quote, have constituency projects. And that's a means of controlling their constituents. So basically, that needs to be refined, and that will actually involve coming up with a new constitution and indeed restructuring the country.
All right, let me go to Professor Femi Odekunle. There's a question to you. It says, after making that fantastic speech, what should we do about corruption, fighting back in Nigeria? how do we tackle this issue of corruption? Because you talked effectively about having systems that are executed to its very last spirit. How do we now take it back, as it were, and fight back corruption? What would you suggest is the way forward, the call to action we need to take today? Professor Femi Odekunle, that question is for you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Now, as I pointed out, it is difficult to rely on the political class because they are the beneficiaries of this corrupt, destructive system. Either we have inherited or we have put on ourselves since they have been having a constitution. Again, we cannot rely on the middle class because the middle class either believe they are beneficiaries or it will be their turn to get to that level whereby they will be joining the exploiting class. Okay. Now, in our different ways, for example, now as a lecturer, I used to pick the conscience of my students. I used to pick the conscience of the people when I give public lectures, whether on television, whether in halls or whatever, about awareness of the dangers of corruption and what it will do and what people need to do to avoid it. That is one way. We take, for example, you have heard of the story of a captain of a class in a primary school who went home and came with a bag of sweets. And when the mother asked, where did you get it? He said, well, I'm the captain of the class. And all those who came late gave me sweets so that I would not write their name down. The mother took action by taking the child back to school and embarrassed the child. Now, in our little ways, we can. But on the whole, I'm sorry to say this, I'm looking forward to a situation whereby a number of good people will arise and be able to mobilize the population to demand good governance, to demand actions against corruption. And recently, about 4 or 5 years ago, I was so angry with the labor union, even with ASU, that all they talk about is increment in their salary or their welfare. Why is it that the old of the labor union, NSC, cannot go and block exercising their rights according to the Constitution, go to the National Assembly and occupy and sleep over to say, unless you change this law, unless you do A, unless you do B, we are not going to leave. But like somebody says, Nigerians, they like to go to heaven, but forgetting that you have to die to go to heaven. And what they are, so, and the people who are organized, not somebody like me or somebody like Kadaria or whoever, that it is important that in our own little ways we influence. But at the end of the day, we have to rely on organized groups like the Nigerian Labour Congress, like the National Association of Students. Now, there's a point I want to make before I hand over the thing to you. Particularly my sister, because Uncle Briggs is one of the people I respect in the country in terms of their views, except the one that attaches to the Niger Delta. But in terms of her political position, I regard and I believe that when I was in detention 97, 98, when I was being tried for coup plotting, she was one of the few people on the left who was praying for me. So that is an assumption. But I want to say, take Asari Dokubo, who said that the problem in the NNDC is simply a pickpocket and we should ignore that. That kind of thinking does not help. And I want to link up that to the position of Uncle Briggs today. And I want to tell her that if South becomes an independent state today, independent nation, unfettered by Nigeria, she will find the problem of corruption and therefore lack of development in that enclave called South-South. I'm sure of that, because you should realize that all the leaders there are similar to the leaders in the Northwest, the Northeast, the Southwest. They eat together, their children marry together, they overlook the deviance of one another. And that's why I think, because that woman, she's very educated, very literate, very conscious. And it pains me when she narrows the matter to a South-South situation, forgetting that if that place becomes independent today, the same problems of the Nigerian state, of the Nigerian nation, in quote, is going to be experienced that one. Whereas it should be around what I talked about. The interest of the collective must be the principle that overrides that of the individual. Wherever that is okay, that society will work, whether it's a state or a nation. Thank you.
Okay, okay, Prof. Let us not forget that in our conversation, she did make the point that we must agree that states must take responsibility for running their states. So I think there's also the element of your conversation in between that as well. Time, let me quickly go over to another question that is knowing at the conversation of today with regards to the issue you just raised. You gave us this powerful illustration of a mother who took her son back to school for collecting what is otherwise is what it is, bribe. He collected sweets in bribe from stopping himself from administering proper punishment to persons who came late, which is the book of the rule book. It's what the rule book states. And for the young man to be doing that at that young age, and the children understood that what they were doing too was definitely buying favor. The mother went back home, took her son, and went to the school to re-emphasize a point, which is this is stealing, this is corruption, this is bribery, it is not tolerated in our home. So like you noted, and Kadraya perfectly stated earlier on, that little drops of water makes an ocean. So every Nigerian must start the change with himself or herself. And that goes back to asking each and every one of us, when we see our own brothers and sisters who are involved in corrupt practices, in runs, in dabo and things like that, do we hail them? Do we clap for them? Do we say, now your turn to chop the money? So in our conversations, like you just rightly pointed out, it is clear that if we do not consciously internalize how we, in smaller ways, say we tick it, the boxes, as something good to continue in perpetuating acts of bribery and corruption and lying and stealing in smaller ways, it becomes bigger because the collective number of those practicing the same habits becomes a ripple effect. So thank you for that story, story you gave to us, that anecdote. We love it. It is quite powerful. And I hope we can all take this and run with it as well. Then quickly, let me look at another question with regards to Ankyo Briggs this time around. Someone is asking a very direct question. He wants to know that by your rating, in the 4 years that Jonathan was put as president, did he really run well as a president? Did he do well for the 4 years he also ran the mantle under his president? On 4 years he was president, in addition to the 2 years he was president after his principal actually passed on. Can you quickly respond to that? Because I think it's in response to the fact that you overemphasized that point earlier on to drive home your point. Ms. Ankyo Briggs, please.
All right. First of all, because both what Prof said and this question are more in line with each other, I think let me quickly address the one of Prof. I thank him for his opinion of me, which is I'm grateful for, but because it speaks more of who I am than not. But that is not really totally who I am. I want it to be understood that I grew up in the Niger Delta creeks before oil was claimed to have been found in commercial quantity, and I know the impression that we were given as a people as what oil is supposed to achieve for us in our lives. Now, I have found that to be a lie based on what I was told and what I still remember by the oil companies when they came to show us a film of what life would be like. But that's a fact. Now, on the other hand, I think that Prof will also know, since he seems to have drawn that impression of me, that my original thinking for a very long time. I've been in activism since 1998, and I didn't really start by just shouting, if we can't live together, we must live apart. No, I was offended by what happened in the devastation of the Niger Delta. The devastation of the Niger Delta was not done by my people. When the devastation started, when Ken Sarawiwa was killed, when Adakaboro came up and started talking about the devastation, it was a combination of irresponsible government, allowing the oil companies to do what they dare not do in America, in Texas, where there is oil. So I have developed this attitude and this position over some years ago. There is no country, if we say that because we know that Nigeria, the Niger Delta, I'm not saying I'm not the only person saying if we cannot live to it. Some people are outright saying, even the Afenifere, some part of Prof's people are also declared, I mean, some have declared independence even, so that's not the point. It's always the last resort. For me, it is the last resort, but I'm definitely standing on my opinion and position that if my people are going to continue to suffer like this, where our oil is going to be taken away 100% and we're giving 13%, and somebody is coming to say, what have you done with the 13%? That's not governance. That's not responsibility. That's just downright looting. And how is it that all the oil allocation is being allocated to people outside of the Niger Delta? So we can go on. And I said also in my presentation that we have to find a solution. What is the solution? We're talking about the problem. Let's begin to look at the solution. The lecturer said the constitution. I agree totally. That constitution is not by us. How do we throw it away? We have the 214 conference report. Nobody's looking at it. Somebody said, I'm not even going to look at it, and that's it. Now, coming to the issue of Jonathan's year. Jonathan served from 2010 to 2011. It was not 2 years, it was 1 year. And then he was elected for 4 years. Now, when you say, many people say, what did Jonathan do for his people? And that was where I was coming from. The question is, everybody says, he was there. Why didn't he fix this? He was there. Why didn't he fix that? That's why I use the example of the East-West Road. East-West Road is not the only problem that we have in the Niger Delta. Now, going to what the question now said, if I think he has done well. Under the circumstances, everything, the railway that is being talked about today, who built those things? And the issue of how we're now being told that China is now going to take part of Nigeria because people went and signed something they didn't read and all of that. What type of governance is that? Jonathan should be asked if he did well. I just highlighted the fact of what the people are saying he didn't do for the Niger Delta. But to be fair, Jonathan did his very best that he did. He did it for others. He didn't do for the Niger Delta region. And other people are actually saying that and blaming him for that. And finally, let me quickly say that I do not think that whether Jonathan did well or did not do well is the issue, because if you look at the number of people that have been killed since this government came, if you look at the how much money we have borrowed, if you look at the rate of the dollar to the naira, and you compare it to Jonathan's time, I don't know how people account for differences, but if you place those differences, you can see what era was better than the other. You cannot say, I will not say, let us put it like that, that this government is better than Jonathan's government. No, I cannot say that. Every government has this issue with corruption, but the corruption we're seeing today, is that the worst corruption? No, it is not. NDDC is it's an agency that was created for the Niger Delta region, and it started at a particular time. And believe you me, if they are not afraid, let the government release the list of people that have been given jobs in Niger Delta through the commission, you will find that the names will go outside of the Niger Delta region. I am not, I have condemned my people. I have said on the Niger Delta issue, corruption issue, that it must be investigated all the way back. And even if my father is found to have been involved in the looting, or me and Kubrick, I should be made to pay. So the thing is that if we don't tell ourselves the truth of how we're going to fix Nigeria, and we keep looking for who to blame all the time, then we won't get anywhere. I don't think Jonathan will be the president of Nigeria again. If he does, I won't even support it. So what I'm saying, therefore, is that the issue is we must make changes. And what are those changes that we're prepared to make? I believe that people, states, should have their autonomy, not freedom or whatever, but autonomy to run their state. See, if my governor does not run my state well, it's my responsibility to hold him accountable. But when the federal government is claiming that it is overseeing, I mean, did we vote for a president to fix Rivers State? No, that's not federalism. Federalism is that the governor, look at what's happening in America. You know, the argument going backwards and forward, and the resistance that Donald Trump is having from the governor. That's federalism. And that's what we should have in Nigeria. And we cannot discount the fact that people are different people. I was a little bit shaken when Prof said, the lecturer said, that he cannot even relate to his state. That's sad for me, but that's for me, but it works for him.
All right.
So that's
Thank
all.
you
I've
so
never
much.
lived outside of my state. I have no desire to live outside of my state.
All right. So I'm going to take some comments quickly from our audience. I have this one from Olakunle Jayesimi, and it says that Ondokare Fuyemi, that's the name, Ondokare Fuyemi says, my suggestion, to check the default of the federal character system, laws should be put in place to sanction the departments that default in the implementation of the federal character system. Those in charge of employment should be prosecuted if they default in the implementation of the federal character system. Ondokare, are you also buying into what Professor Femi said earlier on with regards to what the China implement as well, with regards to if you're at the top of the hierarchy of government, you get dealt with 1 week and you are finished. But if you are of the lower cadre, you are put into a welfare kind of system where you have to rehabilitate yourself, because the higher you are, the more that is demanded of you. All right, then let's go to these other points that have also been made by others. Olakunle Jayesimi says, this point is valid, that tribalism is not itself divisive. It is a recognition of the values and culture provided by individual tribes. It is also a fact that Nigeria must not successfully evolve as a unifying culture, that Nigeria has not successfully evolved a unifying culture, a single national identity, which is important to strive for. We currently pretend to have the identity imparted by colonial minds while we continue with our individual tribal lives while being addressed as Nigerians. There is therefore the need to evolve a national identity, without which, even on that front, Nigeria is yet to become a truly united nation. I think national integration refers to this unifying national identity. The question then becomes, how do we deliberately evolve such an identity? And it's a very powerful question. So I'm going to direct this specifically to our Prof. Abubu to respond to this. Prof, how do you respond to how we can evolve a national identity? Because we keep talking about patriotism, the need for it, but how do we develop it conscientiously, consciously, as a lifestyle, like Olakunle Jayesimi is suggesting, so that it becomes something we own and we run with it? It's not something we think and start analyzing, but it's a default response to have like a typical identity, a Nigerian identity that taps into the Nigerian dream or the Nigerian project. Professor Abubu, please, could you respond to that?
Yeah, I think basically I still have to look at the issue of leadership if you have a truly detribalized leader, that leader can actually coalesce the entire country by coming up with endeavors that attract every community. Now, what our leaders have been doing, primarily is based on ethnicity. Just try to favor one ethnic group versus the other. But at the center, if you have programs, irrespective of where you come from, let everyone chip in and make policies that, in essence, can affect everybody. You try to do it with special interest groups. Make sure we have effective rule and law. Let the laws be there, regardless of who opposite God, as long as we have a true law and order that affects everyone. No one should be protected because of their status. Someone was talking about China. We don't need a law for two different strata. Let the law be applicable to everyone, and we have a leader that can demonstrate, yes, regardless of where I come from, I have the interest of everybody at heart.
Okay, let's go over to Cyril Uchenna Guam. For socio-economic development of Nigeria, power must be devolved to the federating units. The federal should handle only 3 issues: foreign policy and international relations, national security, and currency. Any state not viable should merge with a more viable state after due referendum between requesting and accepting states. The part-time federal unitary legislature will sit once a month at 20,000 per month. Now, Professor Femi Odekunle, would you respond to that, please? Because the issues here are quite in your forte. So can you respond to these points that Cyril Uchenna has just read? Talking about 20,000 naira per month to the federal unitary legislature, and then saying that all the creation of states that we have done all over the years, it is clear that some are not thriving. So they should begin to think of merger. Now, he's also raising another very key important point, which is the terms of national security at the level of federal and currency at the level of federal. And that is the only thing that the federal should handle, while the other issues should begin, people in the state should begin to look at the reality on ground that some states are not quite sustainable and it's time to have a merger. What do you say to that, please, Professor Odekunle?
Hello?
I can hear you. Go ahead, please, sir.
Okay. You see, I want to say that there is a point there that first, but let me take the first part about this. Somebody who mentioned the Chinese situation. They say to whom much is given, what is expected. And there is a relationship between corruption, humongous corruption in high places, and corruption at the middle or lower level. As for the constitution, first of all, I believe there should be only a unicameral legislature. All these legislatures all over the place, they are unnecessary and corrupt or legalized drainage on our resources. Okay. Secondly, I think anybody who wants to go into public office should be able to feed themselves and take care of their basic essence and just get a salary like a civil servant or somebody who works in the bank or whatever. There are many things that are humongously wrong in our system. For example, and the more I talk about it, the more I get angry, and I don't want to have hypertension. Now, for example, we are all graduates, we are all Nigerians. How come that somebody who works in NNPC and somebody who works in CBN, they get about 10 times the salary of somebody who works in the public service, and yet you expect the best from them? How come people who work in the customs or CBN or NNPC or wherever, they get more than, they get twice the salary of a professor, and you expect the professors to give you the best? So we can go on and on. So definitely, if you want the best for governance, there is a need to drastically cut down the allowances of legislators. There is a need. You know, when Obasanjo said, okay, there should be no caste anymore, You know what they did? They now said, well, every committee needs a car. And there are 6 members in the committee or 12 members. They will say there's a pool car, so they will buy 12 cars, which they give to themselves. All those nooks and corners, all those nuances should be dealt with by a president, a leader that has his powers to deal with it. And again, remember when I talked about devolution. I want Nigeria to be one, because I think we are better off if our country remains big as it is, remains well populated, and the resources are put together. So I'm not for breakage or balkanization. Now, but there must be devolution of powers. I remember up to 20 years ago, my argument in the paper I wrote was that there should be a president. Then there should be vice presidents, and you give them responsible and accountable positions. You can say, okay, the president is in charge of security, military, and police. You can say the vice president, I'm just saying, there are many ways of doing it. You can say the vice president is in charge of CBN and other revenue agencies. And you can say a prime minister is in charge of the ministries and the parastatals. There are ways of doing that, rather than this concentration of power in the hands of one person, whereby a director who has never seen the Abuja before gets a letter to say your appointment has been approved by the president. Then you have been removed by the president, and so on and so forth. Why is it not possible that this power of the president is put down in a way that a vice president who will not be from the same zone as the president, a prime minister who will not be from the same zone as those, and they will have definitive areas of responsibility for which they are accountable to the population. And then you have a national assembly that is unicameral and that sits like in Botswana only when due, not these 24 hours, 365 days a year, and they don't work for 24 hours. They start meeting at 12 or 2 o'clock, and they're always on recess for all kinds of things. Even if one of them is put in jail, they will take a recess to go and greet him in Kuje prison. So that is my response, that powers must be devolved. And I emphasize also the matter of socioeconomic structuring. There is no reason in the same market where somebody will be getting ₦1 million per month, and the man who is making this place clean, who is making the place conducive, is getting 30,000 naira. I insist, if you want a good system, a welfare system, the least paid should not get less than 10% of the highest paid. And all the allowances that are actually products of corruption, there must be a way of cutting it off. But the issue goes back to what we said earlier on. Who is to change? The leaders who, if you want to know, are the beneficiaries of this corrupt system, they will not change. It has to do with, and individuals cannot do it. It has to do with organized groups. Civil society are there, but mostly on paper, except a few of them like Serap, who are using the legal bourgeois system to attack the bourgeois arrangement. But I thank them that unlike other civil society, they're at least helping us. But people like student organizations, like Farmers Association, like Nigerian Labour Congress, these are the people who could use their power of togetherness, of numbers, of commitment to actually make these people change the way we want. Because now people talk about democracy. Me, I am convinced that at our stage of development, the value of democracy is overrated. I'm not just saying this today. I've said it repeatedly, that at our stage of development, the value of democracy is overrated. South Korea knew that, Malaysia knew that, Singapore knew that they didn't engage in reckless democracy, reckless rule of law, reckless idea of a concept of fair hearing, reckless idea of due process as we are experiencing, and on that basis, they are being exploited by leaders who have the socio-economic and political means to exploit the legal system. I'm diverting, I apologize.
Okay. Professor Femi Odakunle, 2020, democracy is overrated.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
let me go to
I
Zubi.
said value. The value of democracy is
The value of democracy overrated. Noted,
in our
sir.
stage of development. In our stage of development, yes.
Okay. Now let me go to Zubi Aboifo. He says, honestly, I have a different opinion on identity. The ideology of identity is different from the principle of indigenization. I personally feel that indigenization policy in Nigeria is inimical to our development. I do not have to come from the Niger Delta to operate and within the Niger Delta, as long as I am as qualified as such. Same goes to the north, west, and indeed any part of the country. The idea of creating the NDDC is basically for the development of the region as the name implies. It is not simply for contracting through the Niger Delta indigene. But there are those who also say that the NDDC is a fraud in the sense that the contents of what led to creating it also made it easy for fraud to happen. Then we also have this comment. We have heard of putting the interests of the collective first. That is coming in from Obina Anwege. Being a better individual to be a better Nigerian. Some people have argued the need for organized protests, which we know aren't effective. If there are no transparent and easy routes to report or expose corruption, how does this ordinary citizen circumvent this? That's a powerful point. So the question I'm going to throw to you, Obina, is have you ever participated in any protest? This goes back to the other anecdote that Professor Odekunle stated earlier on. The mother who went ahead, took her son who was given sweets by his classmates, went to the school and say, my son cannot collect sweets because it is corruption, it is stealing. Individually, how well have we also protested? Because to measure a protest for not working means you have also been part of the process from the beginning to the end, like Professor Dekule mentioned, in terms of following it to the letter to the end of its spirit, which is what we don't do enough in Nigeria. The stamina to start a movement and follow it to reach a conclusive end. Now, let's go on to another comment from Emmanuel Asako Kai. But in working system, government workers have a lot of non-emolument benefits that add up. This is in response to Professor Femi Odekunle's comment that how can a civil servant earn less? So Emmanuel is saying, hey, non-government emolument benefit is quite a lot when you sum it all up together in the long run. Somebody else may also say, those other company oil workers or multinational workers also have other emoluments. So it keeps stacking up. So the conversation we should be having is there should be a system of how payment should be made that is standardized and spread consistently across boards. I guess that is the point Professor Odekunle is actually making. And then let's also go to other comments by Yinka Adewumi. I believe the solution is to have core values which defines us as a Nigerian, which determines our interaction, sanction, and reward system. So as much as everybody is saying, yes, we need a collective identity, there's also the conversation of self-identity, tribal identity, indigenization identity, national identity. So all of these identities are crucial, definitely. But the question is, do we know how to marry all of them together so that one does not suffer for the other? But we work towards ensuring that if one succeeds, the other must succeed as well. So it begins to help us look at ourselves again to ask, what are my core values? So it's not so much about which tribe you're from, the conversation we're now having from the responses I'm seeing here. So it's not about where we're from. It's more of who are you? What are your values? What is your contribution? Are you purpose driven? How is your spiritual life? Do you have spiritual poverty? And spiritual poverty is when those who leave Nigeria go overseas, and when they get to overseas, they begin to discover that there's 24 hours light, they enjoy it. Good roads, they enjoy it. And then suddenly, after attaining good health, good wealth, good roads, good light, steady, and all of that, they begin to ask themselves the one question: is this it? Is this it? Which also makes us, those in the diaspora, also long to come back to Nigeria because something else is missing. They want to come back to Nigeria. Yet the question is, who is going to make Nigeria work if all of us leave Nigeria? And then when you now go and you have succeeded and you want to come back, what are you coming back to meet? Are you ready to also come back willingly to take the protest, to fight the fight till the end at the grassroots level, involving all of us? All right, let's go to more points that are raised here. It's not a responsibility for NAS alone. So why a lot of people have been commending the National Association of CDOs for putting this together and having and driving this conversation. Dr. Adepoju, says it is not a responsibility for NAS alone, but every informed Nigerian to create a national orientation awareness environment. We are a population of 200 million as a country. NAS cannot solve all of Nigeria's problems, but rather create forums such as this so that people can go out and spread the news of what is possible. So well done to NAS, and good point you just raised, Dotun. It takes every one of us to form the mighty ocean, a single drop, all collected together. And then Briggs is making a point here that the Niger Delta leaders who have been directly impoverishing their people, that is the conversation we must have. NDDC is being managed by Niger Deltans. So it raises the question for Madam Ankyo Briggs again. We have said that yes, NDDC is supposed to be this, NDDC is supposed to be for the Niger Delta, but really, has it been the case? All right, then this is from Hector Chime. It says, bright young men and women should assume power. In a developing society, knowledge and skills are the privileges of the young who know how to pilot planes, use computers, and run a bank. In such a developing society, old age is not always an asset to run a country. And KSO, the value of democracy is quitting the point that Professor Odekule stated, that the value of democracy is overrated at the current stage of development. Okay, and Patrick Onya says, I think Professor Odekule hit the nail on the head. Any public official who is found guilty of corruption by a court of competent jurisdiction or to face the capital punishment, the law should be amended to that effect. We still have some more, we're actually having more comments from our audience, and this is great. We thank you for your robust conversation in this matter. And we're going to take as many as we can as we coast home gradually to the finality in looking at how we can really integrate ourselves as a national people and a solution to our issues on hand. NAS and other patriotic groups has a very big role to play in reshaping our country. Okay, and let me see other comments here. I'm trying to roll over them quite a lot here too. And let me see how much we can quickly take in that regard. Prof has used the word revolution many times in his conversation. Do you actually believe in it, and how do we achieve it? Cyril Uchena, Guam, he is asking this to Professor Abobo. Please, sir. He says you have used the word revolution many times in this conversation. Do you actually believe in it, and how do we achieve it? And then in consonance to Ogumbo Kunle is a two-in-one question. What is the solution to the corruption in our country, Nigeria? So Professor Abobo, please, could you respond to that?
Well, I think basically, personally, I don't believe in revolution because revolution, yes, it's usually very chaotic. It can destroy values. If the people want to make a change, yeah, if they want to make a change, and indeed they want a revolution, it has to be peaceful. Yeah, if it's peaceful, yes, I can go along with that. But you have to have a goal. What do I want to achieve? Is this revolution or whatever term you use going to bring in everybody? Basically, when you say revolution, you may have an elite basically leading this whole thing. And the general mass probably just go along probably without actually understanding the situation. If the entire community is enlightened, then definitely, yes, I will go with revolution because everybody understands as long as it's non-violent. Thank you.
Non-violent revolution. We underscore that point from Professor Cyril Abobo, non-violent revolution for this year. And then let's go to Andrew David Adejo. Prof, even when you jail them, this is to Professor Odekunle. Prof, even when you jail them, that they can win elections from prison and become chairman of sensitive committees in the National Assembly speaks volume of the implementation of such strategy. And Adepoju Dotun states this: our disorganization and corrupt leadership do benefit foreign governments and institutions who exploit the resources of a country, the story of Africa. And that's in response to Madam Ankyo Briggs' earlier point that how can we sign to China our own sovereignty? How do we do that? I mean, we talked about the 1700 treaties, 1800 treaties the Nigerians signed. How can we be repeating the same error we did with the Royal Niger Company? How can we be doing that again? We did the same thing with the British Empire. How can we be repeating that with China? How can? And so these are the questions that are being flowed back to back. And in connection to that too, I would like Professor Odekunle to please respond to these points that have just been raised.
Okay. I don't know whether you are able to.
Do you want me to rephrase that question?
Yes, I want to be sure that you are. Anyway, you are able to. You can rephrase it, please.
All right. So the point is this: when you jail them, because he was saying that Prof is talking about jailing these people. When you jail them, and they can win elections from prison and become chairman of sensitive committees in the National Assembly, it speaks volumes of the implementation of such a strategy that you have talked about. And then back to back, Dotun Adepoju says that our disorganization and corrupt leadership do benefit foreign governments and institutions who exploit the resources of our country. So in a way, you can see it's connected. Corrupt politicians from prison get juicy political appointments, and the fact that they get these juicy appointments, can you see how it is manifesting in how we are sitting out our sovereignty to a country like China?
Now, I will answer you and put it in context. As for going to jail, it is given in context. Remember, I mentioned in my contribution earlier on to say that one of the problems we have in fighting corruption is that we never see any strategy to the depth of his letter and his spirit. Now, when we say people should go to jail, whether you are rich or you are poor, in fact, the higher you are in the system, the more punishment you should have, because you cannot apply a so-called neutral scale to people who are socioeconomically unequal. So that is one of the the deceits of the bourgeois legal system, applying a scale of equality to people who are unequal. So definitely the people you give more power, who are more influenced by their behavior, who are supposed to be role model, should get more punishment for a similar offense of corruption, particularly the one that affects the lower cadre. Now, the reason why people can win election from prison is part of the conspiracy of the elites who formulated the constitution and continue to make the laws to start with. If you are following my point, you see, if now we have a leadership in Nigeria now that by its character and what we could know as an individual is against corruption. But like I said, fighting corruption is more than administrative or managerial. It has to do with the fundamental principle of social organization of the society and the dominant ethos. Now, if that had been so, somebody like the governor of Bauchi should not be governor of Bauchi today. You know why? Because the system will have been put in a place that somebody who has a case or cases in court, corruption, will be ab initio not be allowed to contest election. A lot of people who are in the National Assembly will not be allowed to contest election. But because let me use the word, the surrounding environment, the reigning ideology, the dominant ethos is such that it allows the people to use legal technicalities to get what they want. That is why you have that situation. In a situation in which we are talking about, it will not be possible for somebody to win election, to even contest for election, let alone win election from prison. I know many cases that you are talking about. I mean, look at the example I gave. First, you have a man who has been tried for 14 years. 14 years jailed. Appeal up to Supreme Court. They said, well, because the judge actually has been promoted, he shouldn't come down to give judgment. Therefore, the man is freed. And he was received with ovation in the National Assembly, in the Senate. Now, of course, that has implication for the anti-corruption fight, the public perception of the fight, and so on and so forth. So I agree that that is the problem, that somebody can win election from what? From the prison. But that is because the overall that I talk about, remember I mentioned 4 factors, and one of the factors has to do with changing the principle of social organization and sort of dealing with the ethos. And by the way, somebody talks about revolution. But revolution doesn't have to be violent. Revolution may be passive. Revolution may be forced. It may be coerced. From the historical information available, there was no violence in Singapore. There was no violence in Malaysia. There was no violence when Park became president of South Korea. What happened is that the leadership got together in those places, whether small or big, to say that we cannot go on like this. If we go on like this, there's no future for our children or for our grandchildren or for the country. And they decided to sort of bring about a revolution in the way they govern the people, so that even when one of them actually is guilty of any malfeasance, they quickly deal with it. And over time, it came down, cascaded down to the population. And then another point I want to respond to is this idea that people are not appreciating in this discussion. It has something to do with the amount of money available. It has to do or income or salary. It has to do with the gap between those at the top, 10% eating and consuming the 90%, and the other 90% who are condemned to only managing 10%. And I always give an elementary position on this matter a long time ago. I said, let's assume there are 2 societies, Society A and Society B. They have the same amount of wealth, let's say 10 naira. They have the same amount of population, 10 people. But in Society A, they distribute their wealth in such a way that about 2 people take 5 naira. About 3 people take 3 naira. And the remaining 5 people are struggling to the extent that some don't even get a kobo. But in Society B, it is so arranged that however good you are, however profit motivated you are, however entrepreneur, you cannot get more than 2 naira. And however poor you are, you get at least 10 kobo. You could see in Society B, there will be more commitment to the values, to the progress, to the development of the group. Whereas in Society A, it will be dog eat dog. The commitment to the values, to the progress, to the well-being of society is almost zero, or is minimal, if not zero. So you should understand that one, that you should work on that one. We have to work on that one. And since we are in a democracy, we can work on that one only through the change of constitution. And by who? Only through the people in the National Assembly. And I've said it cannot be done by themselves. We have to have organized population, like the Nigerian Labour Congress, like National Union of Students, and so on and so forth, to go and besiege these powerful people and ensure that they do the needful in the interest of the society. I hope I'll be able to answer the question.
Yes, you really hit home with that one. So I'm going to take the raised hands now. Everyone who has been raising hands for such a long time, thank you so very much. Joe Riri, your hands is up, and we would like you have 1 minute to run through straight to your question, direct your question to who you want to answer it, and then we'll take it back to back so that whoever you've addressed your question to will be ready to take it on. And then we need Sunny Obasuyi be on the ready. Eneri Kare, 1 minute you have. Augustine Ebele, 1 minute you have. Zubi Agboifo, 1 minute you have. And then someone without a name to it, Galaxy J3 Prime, 1 minute you have. So we have 5 minutes for all of you to have your 1 minute questions asked quickly, directed to the specific speaker you want to address the topic. Please, let's go ahead. Let's have Joe ready for the first speaker. For the first question, rather.
Yes, thank you very much, Mrs. Briggs. My question is actually directed to her. I appreciate the zest and her patriotism for where she comes from, and I respect her views. But the question I have in mind is, in focusing on tribal cleavages and states of origin, won't that clog one's view in appreciating the bigger picture of nationalism? Thank you.
Is that for me? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
ma'am.
that's for you.
Okay, thank you very much. No, see, the way I look at it is this: that where you come from is who you are. You have to come from somewhere. It doesn't matter where you ended up living. You have to come from somewhere. You have to make contribution where you are at the time. So, like the Prof said, if he is from Delta State, as he said, and he's lived all his life, or in Lagos State, he is making contribution in Lagos State, for instance. And as long as he is comfortable in where he is, how he is received, and the contributions he's making, and the people that he has adopted, or the state that he has adopted, is still in Nigeria, that's welcome. Where the problem is where people feel that they are not wanted, and that their contributions, it doesn't matter whether they are in the Niger Delta, but in this, my case, in the Niger Delta, that their contributions, no matter how immense it is, it doesn't really matter, because what matters most is the concept of that you're not a patriot, or you're a patriot, or that it is one Nigeria when it is actually not one Nigeria. Now, I grew up in the 50s. So some of you grew up after independence. I grew up in the 50s, and I know, and as Prof will likely know, what independence was like, what it was like before independence. Now, I have those sentiments, and I apply those sentiments all the 22 years that I have devoted my life to the issue of the injustice of my people. I make no apologies of that. I am not Nigeria. No, nobody is conveying injustice to Nigerians as a holistic entity from Ghana or from Togo or whatever. But I feel occupied. I feel neglected. I feel abused and used, and all of those things. Now, it applies also to this issue of Niger Delta Commission, for instance. The Niger Delta Commission, is a political appointment. When it was Obasanjo's party, he appointed them. When it was Jonathan, he appointed them. So because it's a political appointment, you have to answer to the person that appointed you. So even if I am there, I'm not likely to be able to work, because I will resign. If you bring a note from Abuja and come and tell me that it came from presidency, I should give you 10 billion naira worth of contract, I will not give it to you. Everybody who knows me knows that. So the issue of, I don't even call it tribalism. It makes it sound nasty. It is not nasty. I am an Ijaw woman, and my priority as an Ijaw woman is things to do with Ijaw, not first things to do with Nigeria as everybody. Then it means I'm abandoning myself. This is what I'm driving. I don't hate Nigeria, but if I am not comfortable, I should be able to speak. And I am not happy with where we are today. My people have contributed, and if you really listen to me, you must know that I don't spare my people. My people have contributed to where we are today. But we also must not hide from the fact that there is somebody somewhere beating the drum that is not my people. It's just that my people are dancing to it. If I've never taken political appointment, I don't want it. And I don't want political participation, Senate or whatever. I don't, because I will resign the next minute. So what's the point? Because I will not do anything as normal. I will rise against the grain like I'm doing now. I will take good trouble. I will do good trouble. And that's what I'm doing now.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam Ankyo Briggs. I love your point. So to all our speakers, please, we're trying to round up. Let us stick to our response with 1 minute each, please. I need to beg your indulgence on that one. So for your next question, our next audience who wants to ask the question, please feel free to ask your question in 1 minute. And then to our speakers, try as much to respond to the questions to within 1 minute. It would be lovely to do that. Let's go to Sonny Obasuyi Inihikari. Quickly, over to you, Sonny Obasuyi. Or who is ready to go? Can row really? Is Shadrach Edema ready? Hello. Okay, who is there? Is Shadrach ready? Zubia Boifo, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, please go ahead. Your one question and to who you're directing it to.
Very much, Zubi Agboifo here. My question actually is directed to Ms. Briggs once again. Okay. That's basically because I mean, I'm one from the Niger Delta as well, so it's not like I'm speaking from someone from a different part of the country. But don't you think that the ideology of trying to see yourself first as a tribal person, let me put it that way, works against the collective development of Nigeria? The reason why I'm saying that is I understand that, identities are very important. And of course, I definitely dovetail into the concept of identity. But when we begin to look at things as, with the eye or the spectrum of indigenous ownership, for example, the oil in the Niger Delta belongs to those who are from the Niger Delta. So why are people coming to take our oil? Don't you think that those are the things that actually now generate the wanton or the height of corruption that we see all over? Because everyone wants to begin to act from a protective point of view rather than from a collective development point of view. So if what you're saying, you're Ijaw, you want to first think about yourself as Ijaw, and you want to first of all develop your Ijaw people before you begin to think about Nigeria. The issue I see with that, and I would explain, the issue I see with that is the fact that right now we do have the whole 13% derivative. This 13% derivative runs into billions. This money comes down to the same indigenous governments, like the governors, right? They are the ones who expend the money, and they're supposed to be using it to develop that area. What do they do with that? So do you think that this whole idea of, I come from this place, I want to first develop this place before I think about the general Nigeria, how do you think that, don't you think that actually causes more of this corruption that we have than, helping the entire nation? Thank you.
Okay, maybe at the beginning, I assumed that by now people would have understood that when I say I am just identifying my ethnic group. But when I speak, I'm speaking I'm speaking for all the ethnic nationalities in the Niger Delta. And I think I made reference to that fact that there is a lot of nationalities in the Niger Delta. Time allowing me, very quickly, I didn't say develop the Niger Delta first. I said that we should have access 100%. That one, and that has come over a period of time. Again, I was in the national conference too. That has come over a period of time. We are at the point where if I don't speak for my people, the Niger Delta people, River State people, and I also told you that there are many in the different states. If I am not speaking for them, I cannot claim to be wanting to speak for anybody else. The way the resources have been mismanaged, looted, spent in Nigeria by Nigerians, let's not make it look as if it is Niger Delta people alone that are corrupt. Every ethnic nationality, state, or whatever have their own corrupt issues. So all I am saying is that it has reached a point where, and tribalism is not a dirty word. I said it before. People are making it sound like it's dirty. I didn't say tribalism. I said ethnic nationality. It's my pride. That's who I am. The same way that my hair is pulled back. That's who I am. So I am not saying that I should cast Nigeria away. I'm saying, and I'm not apologizing, that I will definitely from here on fight for justice, liberty, and equity for my people, because Nigeria has not done it. The people who have governed Nigeria from amalgamation, the British, till now, have not looked at the interests of the Niger Delta people. And I will look at the interest, and I will not apologize for it. And I believe we'll be better off.
Thank you. Straight to the point. And now let's go to Shedrack Edema. Shedrack, you have the floor. You're our final person for today. Go ahead, please.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I want to ask a question and maybe buttress Mrs. Ankyo Brick's points. The truth is, if we are looking at national integration, you need justice in every aspect of the society before people will feel okay and say they want to integrate. So I think we should look at Madam Anki's point from that perspective, that justice engenders equality and then integration. Then I would also like to ask the Prof a question on for him to clarify what he means by democracy is not what we need at this point, and for him to tell us what would be a better system of government to drive Nigeria to a better level. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, Professor Dekule, you are on, and I think that point has just been made. He has highlighted Madam Ankyo Brick's point of view. So let's hear Professor Femi Odekunle respond to Edema's question. Professor Odekunle, are you there? All right.
Are you
okay. So
can you hear me?
Yes,
okay.
Go ahead.
No, so simply to say that when I say I'm not against democracy, I'm just saying at our stage of development, we cannot engage in reckless or moderated democracy. And I've given the example of Singapore, Malaysia, and South Korea. They had democracy, they developed up to this point. But we cannot behave as if we were United States of America. Is that kind of a recklessness that makes us believe that allows us that even people in prison can then get win election and go to jail. It is that kind of democracy that we are on that is allowing about 20 or 30 people in your National Assembly facing corruption charges. It is that kind of democracy that allow state assemblies to pass laws that says that somebody who has been governor for 4 years can be earning 30 million a month, and his wife and children can be riding cars and going abroad on our revenue. So what I'm trying to say is that we even within this faulty constitution, there are a lot of things that could be done to cut the wings of recklessness of our democracy that is being abused by the political class. That is my point. I'm not saying I'm against democracy. I say at our stage of development, the value of democracy is overrated. And if we are able to moderate, we will develop more because corruption will be less. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Odekunle. And to wrap it all up, I'm going to take some very salient points some persons have made today, and I hope that we will all walk away with it. The key points here are this, that one, Chukwu Emeka Mba says we're expecting too much from the National Assembly. In other words, because they benefit from the system, they will perpetuate the system. So you and I, we should begin to ask ourselves, what can we do to get out persons who perpetuate a nasty, dangerous, corrupt system that allows them to be in office for a long time? We both know what the answer is. It means getting up, going to the National Assembly, State Assembly, going back to the voters register, thinking about recalling people. Then actions have consequences, according to Emmanuel Obebo, either positive or negative, until we fashion a system where failure is punished and good deeds rewarded. Nigeria would continue where it is. The inequality in the pay scale is alarming, such that the middle class has been eroded. Good point. We cannot live in a country where there cannot be consequences for action. Let us always remember the story Professor Odekunle shared with us. When your child comes home with sweets and he tells you that The sweets are because he was punishing his class. He was about to punish his classmates, but they settled him with the sweets so that they can go off scot-free from being punished for coming late. If we endorse that at any level, we are also part of the system. It is time we also begin to look at ourselves eye to eye, face to face. In the mirror, when you wake up, who do you see? What kind of person stares back at you? What is your value system? Are you spiritually poverty ridden? And when we say spiritual, we don't talk about religion here. What is your purpose for existence? What is your contribution on this earth? What can you do to make the difference in your own environment? Now, I got this one from Flora Okose, where I come from Kenya. First, you are Kenya before you are from any tribe. Tribe is secondary, and we are proud to be Kenya. I think we can borrow a leaf from that. While your identity cannot be eroded in terms of your history, your culture, your belief system, and all of that. If you are in Nigeria, we must also think strongly, as we are strong about our tribal identity, about the national identity. Without one, the other suffers. So let us not kid ourselves to say that if we are very tribal, then national can survive. Sometimes it often doesn't work that way. Instead, it's about developing the two prongs consistently, conscientiously at the same time. One cannot suffer for the other because it takes a conscientiousness. If you've never lived in Nigeria, you can never know what it means to be Nigeria. But if you decide that when I come into this country, I want to be in Nigeria, then you become a Nigerian. So that's what we're talking about here. Country first before tribal inclination, says Emmanuel Weber. And then Okechukwu Umedi. I am not from a job, but I identify with the experiences Mrs. Briggs shares. And we should begin to look at the story of Nwene and see how we can begin to tackle managers who think they have powers to abuse office. Then Professor Adesoji Adesuba. So if people are advocating for change, say they will go to politics and take government appointments, who will or should be? People who won't fight the system to get things right, then we will continue to allow charlatans continue to determine the course of our development and aspirations. I cannot even emphasize that even more. It's not about getting into politics. We must all remember that. If we are sitting in our places, wherever we are, and saying we are waiting to take position in government, and so therefore we don't want to be the first to cast the stone. We don't want to be the first to speak against the government. Instead, we want to be bystanders. We feel that, okay, you know what? If I don't talk, when I get there to nobody will talk, then we're only perpetuating a Pygmalion effect where we have self-sabotaged our own advancement and the definition of the Nigerian project or the Nigerian dream that we should have. And then finally, from one of our contributors here, let's go into the ring and change the system with our actions. Professor Adesoji Adesuga. An aggregate of the right things must make this work. Even though it takes an apple, remember, it's only an apple that it takes to spoil the broth. Just an apple. The bad people are few. We are many good people. Can we all just come together and speak as one and begin to influence our circle of influence rather than think to be somebody like the Godfather proxy? I will borrow some points from Chuma Nwokolo. He made it very powerful, and I think it is sensible. If we understand what Godfatherism is, it will help us to make some points here. Qualifications to be a Godfather proxy, if you are one, ask yourself. Timidity. It means that you are pliable and you're not courageous enough to stand up to the excessive demand of your sponsors. To be a Godfather proxy means you are corrupt. In other words, as a proxy, you must be corrupt and unprincipled enough to steal public funds to recoup the expenses the Godfather has invested in him with substantial dividends. Corruption, therefore, is central qualification for a surrogate. If you are a Godfather proxy, it means you are nepotistic. In other words, a proxy has to be ready to make public appointments on parochial considerations. Professor talked about the need for us to begin to review our regional loyalties. It defined what an indigene is. You are a Nigerian indigene. It called on the need for us to stop the idea of certain entitlement, regional entitlement. We need to change all of that. That is a nepotistic tendency. And then a Godfather proxy is one who is compromised. In order to trust their proxy fully, Godfathers usually have to have some leverage over them. This could be a history of illicit transactions or simply information that leave the proxies open to blackmail and therefore under the Godfather's total control. If we are going to solve this problem, this is what we must do. And this is our take home today. Godfathers usually get their paybacks through kickbacks and over invoice payments made through companies. The proposed Corporate Corporation Act shuts that down. Whistleblowers who inform, whose information leads to a conviction, are rewarded with a percentage of the recovered assets. This guarantees that secret deals don't stay secret forever. The Godfather's connection can no longer secure any prosecution. The moment any of the Nigerian 37 attorneys general can bring action to litigate and erring companies. All of this are some of the things we need to take home. We are the change that we seek. That's the hashtag I'm proposing. We are this change that we seek. We will create the country we desire to live in. Only we, nobody else. I want to thank everybody for being part of this program, but I cannot do that. I am going to hand over to the main host of our event today, none other than Bat Ekelemo, to please come over to give us the vote of thanks. Please put your hands together for our host, Bat Akelemo. The name just almost went off there. Please put your hands together for Bat Akelemo as our host to give the vote of thanks. I am Ejiro Umokoro, your moderator.
Wow. I'm blown away, really. I'm blown away. I don't know what to say. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being part of this rich, incisive, and robust discussion. The exchange of views, raising topical issues, proposing.
Louder.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
I was saying the exchange of views across subjects, raising very topical issues, proposing solutions like Professor Bobo did, with a focus on how to reshape Nigeria and the Nigerian mindset. It's just great and awesome. On behalf of the organizing team of the 23rd Wole Soyinka lecture, and on behalf of the National Association of Senators, Paris Confraternity, I wish to express a very profound gratitude and thanks to everyone who joined this discourse today, either on this platform we're using now or on social media, YouTube and Facebook. We're most grateful. Most gratitude goes to Professor Bobo, who took time out, woke up early morning, 5 o'clock his time, he was online, who is our keynote speaker today. I can't but thank the indefatigable first professor of criminology in Nigeria, Professor Femi Odikule. Much respect for the Edo State man. The astute media personality, Ahmed Kadera, I think she's locked up because of the Muslim festival. And as well as the firebrand, Madam Briggs. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you everyone for the robust and rich discussion we've had. Lady Ejiro, I don't know what to say. You've reaffirmed here today that you're not just an award winner, but an astute communicator in delivering. Madam, many thanks for the excellent moderation of today's lecture. We've heard it on national integration, corruption, gullibility of the citizens, time to take control. What we say in the piece, the art over here, is of the same, very the conversation